Chapter 76. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go? Xiaofan provides you with wonderful novels to read. Under the stimulation of anger, Cat Eyes felt that her thoughts were unprecedentedly clear. She wanted to destroy this demon's scheme. She immediately opened her mouth to shout, but only then did she discover that not a single muscle in her body was listening to her commands. Anger was only a temporary flame, while fear was a boundless tide that would extinguish the flame as soon as it rose. At this time, all of Cat Eye's strength had melted away in the great tide of fear. At the same time, her will had melted away as well. In the tide of fear, feelings of regret began to emerge. This demon, he's been eyeing me for a long time? Or is it because I bumped into him? God, I'm so stupid. Amidst her self-reproach, Cat Eyes was like a sacrificial offering placed on an altar. Her body could not move, her mouth could not speak, and even her thoughts gradually stiffened. Only his blood and soul flowed out bit by bit, flowing to an unknown destination. She tried to find the home of her blood and soul, but in a daze, it was as if she had fallen into a boundless dark prison. In the restless darkness, the treacherous and cold 6 spots of light lit up. The blurry silhouette around it moved its many legs and gradually approached. His already stiff consciousness suddenly moved, receiving a stimulus. It was a vivid memory from the target's information. Human-faced arachnid? Why the human-faced arachnid? In her daze, no one could answer her questions, let alone ease her fear. When the human-faced arachnid's image became clear, the surrounding dark veil seemed to come alive. It possessed its own meaning. The twisting darkness at the front of the human-faced arachnid that was constantly drawing closer to her must be its ugly mouth. He was going to be chewed, corroded, and swallowed. No, absolutely not. Cat Eyes suddenly came to a realization that came from the spiritual perception of an awakened. It didn't matter if this was a devil's ritual or if it was a trap or a plot. If she was truly devoured by the human-faced arachnid right now, she would certainly be consigned to eternal damnation. She would never have the chance to start over again. Help, help. Someone save me. Cat Eyes howled at the top of her lungs in the gradually muddled mental plane. But on the plane of reality, she merely hung her head and trembled slightly. Love Gobe small, say, net chew. The more she sensed the real situation, the more despair she felt. What kind of power could confine her in this terrifying darkness? Was there no power that could save her? Walala! A strange trembling sound rang out. From the deepest part of the darkness, a long chain shimmering with a faint light suddenly pierced through. This was a change that Cat Eyes could not comprehend at all. But she was faced with the desperate situation of the human-faced arachnid's devouring. She struggled to grab hold of any variable. If both of them were in a hopeless situation, she would choose the relatively better one. She focused all of her consciousness and screamed desperately, "Help! Help!" The chains clearly sensed her summons and came crashing through the air. Cat Eyes did not have the slightest intention of evading. She allowed the chains to pierce through her body and pierce through her soul. She did not feel any pain. Instead, she felt a strange sense of support. She tried her best to penetrate the shackles into every corner of her body and mind. The walala trembling sound disappeared and was replaced by a strange, ka-sua-sua-sua sound. Every time a chain was locked, it would be dead. From Cat Eyes' perspective, this represented a safety rope on the body of a person in danger. Every time a chain was locked, she felt a wonderful sense of security and satisfaction. Then, Cat Eyes felt herself rise up and gradually leave this darkness. Her strength gradually recovered and her consciousness entered the plane of reality. She faintly felt that something was wrong. But the incomparably realistic experience of the mental plane collided with reality. It was as if she was placed in a half-awake and half-awake dream. Everything that was inconceivable seemed to be as it should be. She even took the initiative to enter the psychic wave network and went to Project 001 where everyone was gathered. At this time, she was completely capable of letting out a cry for help that she had not been able to before. But this thought had just emerged when it was extinguished like a bubble in the face of enormous fear and uncertainty. Cat Eyes had a feeling that the chains that pierced through her body and soul were her support. But a single sound could strangle her to death. In other words, her life was completely in the hands of the chain's controller. This was completely illogical, but Cat Eyes did not have the courage to verify it in her current dazed and chaotic mental state. Right now, all she wanted was for this damnable operation to end quickly so that she could properly sort out the logic within. Or perhaps, the controller of the chain. Cat Eyes' gaze fell upon Luo Nan's body. It was him, this demon. It would be fine if he could give her a clear explanation. But from beginning to end, Luo Nan did not give her a single glance or a single hint. It was to the point that Cat Eyes sometimes wondered if everything that was happening before her eyes was just a hallucination of a mental patient. And at this time, an astonishing development occurred in Project 001. A low clamor sounded in the encrypted communications channel. It's right. It's right. Where is this? Everyone's attention was focused there, including Cat Eyes. The dream and reality were connected. The two mutually permeated each other. Everything became as it should be. Project 001 had already turned into a conference channel. Cat Eyes' late arrival did not attract anyone's attention. Everyone focused their attention on the structural diagram of Limestone Water Village Pub. The diagram that Luo Nan took out corresponded to a certain part of the diagram. The diagram that came from Luo Nan was a variant of a hexagram. The corners were slightly rounded. This sort of structure did not exist on any of the floors of the building. However, when Yuan changed her train of thought and piled up the floor plans of each floor, the answer suddenly appeared. It's the west side of the 16th, 17th, and 18th floors. The rooms of the 3 floors are grouped together. It belongs to a KTV club. Yuan came to a conclusion after looking through the hotel's information. The relevant information was immediately converted into psychic wave information and transmitted directly into everyone's brain. Yuan's move, even with the support of the Hexa ear, was an extremely high-level application on the mental plane. It was hard for normal awakened to even dream of it. But at this time, no one expressed any astonishment. This was because all the astonished emotions had long since been filled up by Luo Nan. Zhang Yingying's question represented practically everyone. What does this position represent? Is it the hiding place of the human-faced arachnid? Yes. I believe that this is just a place where it once stayed. Moreover, it played a crucial role in forming its current state. Luo Nan honestly explained according to the feeling he got from his drawing. He also felt that he was becoming more and more like a psychic. But you went straight to the 21st floor. You've never been here before, right? No. You've never been here before? This is my first time here. Even though the large living area had an awe-inspiring reputation within Acumen College, this was Luo Nan's first time here. On the other side, Bamboo Pole could not help but speak in doubt. Then how did you come up with this diagram? Out of thin air? Luo Nan still answered every question. I've never been here before. But Cat Eyes should have been here before. In an instant, everyone's gazes turned to Cat Eyes in unison. Chapter 77. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go? Xiaofan provides you with wonderful novels to read. Cat Eyes suddenly had a ridiculous feeling of absurdity as she faced everyone's gazes. Love, go small, say. Netka, you guys are searching for the human-faced arachnid here. Do you know that there is a fellow who can snatch food from the mouth of the human-faced arachnid sitting right next to you? But in the end, she just replied blankly, I've been to the 18th floor and passed by this KTV, but I didn't feel any hexagram. Cat Eyes did not use the psychic wave network. Instead, she spoke directly. This made her feel that she was a bit closer to reality. No one could understand her current state of mind. Everyone thought back to Luo Nan's request for Cat Eyes' help. Someone couldn't help but exclaim in a low voice, That's awesome. This is memory reading and subconscious digging. Lao Bai's dreamland technique? Old Bai's results are all messed up. How can it be so clear? Yes, it's completely graphic, so it's not easy to decipher. Hey, kitty. Does it feel good to be dug so deeply? Finally, there was someone who was concerned about Cat Eyes' condition. However, Cat Eyes responded with a 12-centimeter tall slender root. With a howl, the one with the foul mouth knelt down, hugging his feet. Yuan clapped her hands, getting everyone present to focus their attention. In any case, we must conduct an investigation. We must strive to understand the mysteries behind the growth of the human-faced arachnid's strength. At the same time, you can also do some practice. The previous meeting had more or less produced some results. Yuan convinced this group of ability users. In this situation where they were unable to sense the human-faced arachnid, they had to formulate a strategy around Luo Nan in order to guarantee their safety and effectiveness. Due to the lack of time, They had only made a preliminary design. There were many details that had not been perfected. They could use this opportunity to demonstrate it on the spot. From the 81st floor to the 18th floor, the 63rd floor should be fine, right? No one answered, and no one cowered. At a time like this, there must be no problem. Luonan looked all around. It seemed that he was the only one who didn't understand what was going on. That's right, when they were arguing just now, I was lost in thought. Currently, in the Limestone Water Village pub, there were a total of 12 members. Among them, the Black Wolf was heavily injured and unconscious, while the Black Beetle had long since left the team, leaving only 10 members. In addition, there were 4 professional bodyguards that Yuan had brought along. One of them was assigned to take care of Black Wolf, Shuelei, and the others who were injured. This way, there were a total of 13 people. This was precisely the centralized mode that Yuan had always advocated. Of course, this mode didn't mean that everyone had to squeeze into the same elevator. The 13 of them were divided into 2 groups. Luonan, Yuan, Zhang Yingying, the 3 bodyguards, and the society's Cragburst, a total of 7 people walked through the elevator. The power to protect Luonan was strengthened to the greatest degree. The other 6 people maintained a certain distance. They descended rapidly from the fire escape passageway and the inclined surface of the outer wall of the building. They formed a resonance with Luonan and the others. The hexa ear was used to maintain communication in the middle. In case they encountered an attack from the human-faced arachnid, or if Luonan formed a clear response, they would quickly form an encirclement of support. The strategy was simple and crude, but it was very suitable for this temporary combination. Only the awakened could achieve such a direct method of advancement. Among them, Cat Eyes was nimble and lithe, as well as her long-range perception ability. She naturally became the scouting vanguard, and she was also one of the members that descended from the building. She shuttled back and forth amidst the interweaving lights and shadows of the building. The cold autumn night wind blew against her face. In the past, it would have been so carefree. But now, it was unable to blow away the knot in her heart. Cat Eyes was still hoping that she would be far away from Luonan. The situation of being bound and restrained would take a turn for the better. But when she deliberately dashed forward, putting a distance of 100 meters between them, the incorporeal chains continued to exist. Some of the chains were even buckling together. They made a clicking sound that was neither too fast nor too slow that only she could hear. She could not help but tremble with every sound that rang out. Although the physical distance was pulled apart, she was clearly getting closer and closer to the master of the chains on the mental plane. It was absolutely not an emotional distance. Instead, it was a terrifying magnification and distortion. Luonan's current state of mind was tranquil and slightly depressed. From Cat Eye's perspective, it was like the gray clouds of the desert sky were pressing down on her head. She unconsciously felt a bit suffocated. She seemed to be able to hold on for now, but she did not dare to imagine what would happen to her if Luonan became irritable and furious. "Kitty, you're rushing forward too much," Zhang Yingying reminded her through the hexa ear. Cat Eyes snorted to herself. Her tall and slender roots drew a long mark on the glass wall, stopping her downward momentum. She speculated maliciously in her mind. Did Luonan tie up this Zhang Yingying long ago? Did she wag her tail and beg for pity? Does Her Majesty Empress Wu know about this? But soon, reason and her senses simultaneously told her that this was clearly not the case. Up until now, she was the only unlucky person in the vicinity. This answer made Cat Eyes even more vexed. Currently, Cat Eyes was the first to reach the 20th floor. She had taken the 5 floors up and down, a vast area of 50 meters in diameter, into the range of her senses. According to the plan, she leaped into the hallway of the building and walked down the fire escape. At the same time, she reported the situation. It really is a KTV. It's also a clubhouse, the kind that hurts the eyes. Humph, the age composition is seriously low. Young people these days. Cat Eyes entered the clubhouse, which was decorated in a blurry and strange style. It was like a maze, just like the vast majority of similar places. Cat Eyes was dressed in a fiery dancer outfit. She fit in quite well. The young boys passing by cast their gazes at her. Occasionally, they would bump into a waiter, but they would be confused by the thick makeup on her face. In a moment of stupefaction, they would pass by her. Cat Eyes swayed her long legs. She seemed to be leisurely, but she was actually very nimble as she passed through the rooms on the 3 floors. In the end, she arrived at the 16th floor. According to the floor plan, this was one of the largest rooms in the hexagram structure. Right now, a fiery party was going on inside. Although she did not enter the room, her sight, hearing, and smell had already clearly reproduced the situation inside with her long-range senses. Cat eyes lazily transmitted, "No ability users have been discovered. Do you want to do an on-the-spot investigation?" This time, it was He Yueyin who spoke. "Don't destroy the scene. Wait until Mr. Luo arrives before handling it." Just as the call ended, someone swayed over from behind. It was a young lad. His age could not be over 20, but it was clear that he was very experienced. He pretended to be dizzy and simply reached out with his hand to touch Cat Eyes' perky buttocks. However, when he was 2 centimeters away, the young drunkard felt a pain in his wrist. He inexplicably swung his body to the side and slammed into the wall with a bang. The young drunkard was in a daze. Just as his anger was rising, he was suddenly dumbfounded. Cat Eyes was silently leaning against the wall to the side. The sexy curves in the tight sequin dance costume, the long legs wrapped in black stockings, and the thin and tall legs that stretched the soles of her feet, together with the wall and the floor, naturally formed a soul-stirring shape. Her casually scattered short curly hair covered a small half of her face. Her fiery red lips faintly opened and closed, forming a smile that was not a smile. "Little brother, do you have a cigarette?" The young drunkard immediately forgot about his previous encounter. He chuckled foolishly. "I don't have any on me, but I do have some inside. Our Mystic Arts Research Society does this. Let's go together." He reached out with his hand to touch Cat Eyes' towering chest. However, what welcomed him was the world spinning once more. This time, his head slammed into the wall and he immediately fainted. Chapter 78. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go? Speak Net. Providing you with wonderful novels to read. Cat Eyes exerted her strength ingeniously. She let the young drunkard support himself with his shoulders and feet. He was half leaning and half crooked, maintaining his body from falling. Love, go little, say, Netku. In addition to the flirtatious beauty at his side, it was a typical case of a pervert meeting a flirtatious ghost. They were about to fool around together. The waiters that passed by occasionally cast curious glances at them at most. They didn't have any other reactions. Cat Eyes just waited at the door. She even had the leisure to pull out a lady's cigarette and light it. She casually asked in the channel, "What the hell is the Mystic Arts Research Society?" There are 6 schools nearby. There are 4 societies with the same name. The Mystic Arts has been quite popular in recent years. The figure just now was a variation of the Star of David. It doesn't seem like a coincidence. Bamboo Pole, who was in charge of intelligence work, indicated for Cat Eyes to lift up the drunkard's face. He gave her a face recognition and soon came to an answer. Huang Bingjin, Acumen College's Mystic Arts Research Society officer. He's a rich 2nd generation. Acumen College. Zhang Yingying let out an unclear laugh. Unfortunately, no one besides Luo Nan understood. Bamboo Pole continued. In addition, I discovered something amazing in the club's database. Take a look at what it is. A contact list. They're all female students. The information is complete. The types are plentiful. There's everything you need. Wah! A strange silence appeared in the channel until Crag Burst, who was next to Luo Nan, cursed and revealed the secret. They're charging by the head. Bamboo Pole, why don't you go die? Crag Burst was a 2-meter-tall brawny man. He had spent nearly 10 years in the military. His temperament was a bit coarse, but he was an extremely good choice for a bodyguard and shield. It was because of his military background that he was the most respectful and cooperative towards He Yueyin. Love, go little, say, Netku. He instinctively glanced over, but He Yueyin's expression didn't change. It was as if she hadn't heard a thing. Bamboo Pole didn't forget about proper business in the private channel. The database contains the agreement signed between the club and Acumen College's Mystic Arts Research Society. You can see that the club was renovated 4 years ago in accordance with the design requirements of the society. At the same time, this club is also a big financial backer of the club. The funds listed in the public accounts are more than 7 figures every year, and it's even more unclear in private. The elevator had already reached the 16th floor. Unlike Cat Eyes, this group of people was too big of a target. The waiter came over early to inquire about them. He Wei-in ignored him and directly asked Luo Nan, "Mr. Luo?" Luo Nan raised his head and looked at this strange and indistinct clubhouse space. The basic characteristic of the coating on the outer wall was that it was made up of peculiar tree vines and decorative designs that encircled the mysterious circular structure of a magical array. The dim, dark red streams of light were like solvents entering tubes in a laboratory. They passed through the vines and patterns on the wall and traveled among the seemingly independent magic circles. Luo Nan looked for quite a while before speaking in a low voice. "The lighting effects here are quite interesting." The waiter clearly saw who was standing in the middle of the crowd, and immediately revealed a standard smile. "The style of our clubhouse was planned and designed by a professional mysticism team in order to bring our customers a brand new and special experience." Luo Nan interrupted the waiter's cliché. "Prepare a private room for us. Also, are the members of the Mystic Society still in 1613? Luo Nan was referring to the room that Cat Eyes had locked onto. The waiter nodded and Luo Nan headed over there. He Wei-in ordered the 3 bodyguards to wait in the private room first. Zhang Yingying had the waiter prepare a fruit platter and red wine. She had the appearance of meeting a guest before having fun. At the same time, He Wei-in issued an order on the psychic wave network, Octopus. Hallucinogen. Several seconds later, a young man wearing a funny cartoon t-shirt and a jacket came out from a nearby restroom. He greeted Cat Eyes, who was waiting outside 1613, and directly pushed open the door to enter. Cat Eyes grabbed the young drunkard next to her and entered the private room right behind him. The overall structure of 1613 was an extremely standard circular shape. The dazzling projection equipment in the center was designed in the form of a very peculiar lampstand. Right now, it ignited with an ambiguous pink glow, smearing the dusky room into an even more chaotic mess. There were no sofas, chairs, or the like in the private room. There were only a few soft cushions. Everyone was casually sitting on the ground. There were 20 to 30 people playing and accompanying. But right now, these people were already under the dual effects of their own drugs and Octopus's hallucinogen. Their consciousness was in chaos. They were either men and women hugging each other or laughing and crying. They were completely unaware of the changes in the outside world. Even Octopus did not expect this excessively intense result. He was currently adjusting the composition of the drug in a flurry to avoid creating a group of idiots. Cat Eyes rolled her eyes at him and casually tossed the drunkard to the ground. "Hurry up. We're already outside." A knock rang out from the door as they spoke. The waiter was the first to walk in. He saw this scene, but he didn't seem surprised at all. He very naturally spoke to Octopus, who was standing there in a clear-headed state. "A guest has come to visit." Luo Nan and his group walked in as they spoke. "Ah, Lil Nanster." Octopus didn't care about the drug. He had a pleasantly surprised appearance of seeing an old friend. He laughed heartily as he walked forward and gave Luo Nan an extremely forceful hug. His clumsy and pale acting made He Wei-in frown. However, the waiter really didn't notice anything out of the ordinary. He turned around and left after Zhang Yingying took the fruit platter and red wine. The scene of a dove occupying a magpie's nest was completed. Luo Nan coughed as he pushed Octopus away. He also stopped his passionate patting. He looked around the room and saw the chaotic situation. For a time, he didn't know what to say. Zhang Yingying casually picked up a piece of fruit and sent it into her mouth to taste. She said vaguely, "Are you disappointed? It looks like you were nearly one of them." Luo Nan responded casually, "It looks like there are quite a few places where I can be of use. I don't have to worry about not having a spot in the future." Ha! Luo Nan no longer paid attention to Zhang Yingying. He turned to Octopus with a smile. "Bro Octopus, your drug concoction is quite beautiful. Please give me some pointers in the future." Octopus was baffled. He could only laugh. Well said, well said." Cat Eyes shot him a cold glance and directly fired a map cannon. A bunch of trash. This group of people turned from guest to host. They greeted and chatted within the room. But He Wei-in didn't forget the most important matter from beginning to end. She looked all around at the decorations of the room and the decorations on the walls. Her brows furrowed tighter and tighter. She stepped over the bodies lying on the ground and walked to the center of the projection equipment. She carefully observed the extremely medieval style of the lampstand. Luo Nan didn't bother with Zhang Yingying and the others right now. He continued to observe and sense, but his attention was placed on the rather gorgeous pattern of the floor. Under the cover of the bodies, the pattern seemed to be broken and continuous. It passed through the transfer of many geometric figures to converge towards the central region. Finally, Luo Nan's gaze also cast towards the lampstand. He just so happened to collide with He Yuan's gaze. "Mr. Luo?" Luo Nan nodded towards her. The human-faced arachnid should have appeared here before. Chapter 79. I think that the surrounding things are all its nourishment. Luo Nan pointed at the surrounding squirming and giggling human bodies. The human-faced arachnid really did have a special fondness for these negative emotions and desires. He hesitated for a moment before continuing to speak. There are also these patterns. They count as magical arrays. I know very little about the mystic arts. Are there any that I'm good at? Zhang Yingying immediately raised her hand from behind. Does my experience with tarot cards count? He Yuan saw that Luo Nan wanted to say something but hesitated. She directly said, "Right now, Mr. Luo, you are the only one among us who has the qualifications to make a judgment about the human-faced arachnid. There is no need to introduce other explanations." Zhang Yingying stuck out her tongue. Luo Nan scratched his head, but in the end he continued. "In the beginning, I thought that these decorations, the vines, the patterns, and the magical arrays were all just for show. They had no real meaning. But here, a portion of the patterns seem to have displayed their use. They are like water channels, gathering a portion of energy here." Luo Nan pointed at the projector in the form of a lampstand. He didn't need to bring out his psychic abilities. He just needed to use his eyes to do this. The geometric patterns and the lampstand left behind remnants similar to the dark red spores on the warship, but they were also slowly evaporating. He Yuan couldn't see these residues, but she took out a small and exquisite spray from her pocket and sprayed it on the lampstand. After 2 seconds, the light screen that came with the spray flickered with a faint light. Luo Nan could roughly guess that this should be a special substance similar to the shadow mist. It was capable of capturing traces of the Darksider species interfering with the real world. Indeed, there are remnants of the relevant rays. Zhang Yingying walked over at this time. She pressed down on Luo Nan's shoulder and looked at the lampstand. A while passed before she spoke to He Yuan, who was carefully observing as well. "The matter seems to be complicated. Does it involve a secret order?" He Yuan grunted but didn't immediately respond. Secret order? Luo Nan didn't understand. An inexplicable and troublesome organization of lunatics. Luo Nan stared at her. "You said that ability users don't have secret societies and the like." "Nothing is absolute in this world, and it's not a secret society. It's a cult, okay?" Zhang Yingying saw that He Yuan didn't respond for a time. She faced Luo Nan and shrugged her shoulders. "Think about it. There are 600,000 ability users in the entire world. The number of people who have a relatively complete cultivation system and have cultivated in a down-to-earth manner is at most a tenth. As for the remaining 500,000 or so, many of them have inexplicably acquired certain abilities. If no one guides them in time, many of them will start to become arrogant and consider themselves to be new human beings or children of God. They think that they are at the peak of mankind and can do whatever they want. That's what happens in many novels and comics, right? Hee hee. It's useless. This is the reality. Of course, most of these idiots would be taught a lesson by the police. If you can't even beat the exoskeleton armors, then don't brag about being a child of God or a holy infant. For those who are more troublesome, the burners of the military will meet them. After that, the association will communicate with them and welcome them into the organization to correct their worldview." Zhang Yingying spread her hands. "But in the end, there are still some very special fellows. They should be considered the gifted among the gifted. They are indeed extremely powerful. Even within the society, I'm afraid they are the most top-notch. It's not easy to communicate with them. They don't agree with the society's definition of the ability system. Instead, they have another kind of explanation. But their explanations often use their own abilities to forcefully apply myths, religions, mystic arts, and other existing theories. Or they go wild with their imaginations and change their appearances. The final result is establishing sects and religions. There are many secret sections. These people want to put their exotic theories into practice in the world. They want to verify the holes in their imaginations. That's how they establish themselves. The problem is that they themselves are very powerful, but their related theories are very preposterous. If you cultivate according to their theories, most people will die very miserably. But there's no other way. Magical powers are more awesome than 10,000 sentences of truth. There are still large batches of people who join these sections. They offer their everything and are extremely devout. The government has a huge headache over these things. Of course, the society has a huge headache as well. Luo Nan heard the hidden meaning in her words. In other words, the society can't do anything about them. It's holding back for fear of hurting the innocent. The leaders of these sects are brainless, but their strength is really very strong. Plus, these sects are deeply rooted in the cities. With the current population density, it would be better to just drop a nuclear bomb in the center of the city if they really were to turn hostile. Don't doubt me. Think about the human-faced arachnid. There's also the R&D district. Luo Nan was speechless for a time. He was a bit spellbound. Could those powerful ability users really possess the terrifying destructive power of a nuclear bomb? He was stimulated by this information. After coming back to his senses, he simply poured out the series of questions he had been suppressing at the bottom of his heart. Then how does the society define the ability system? In the end, what counts as an awakened? And what level am I at right now? Zhang Yingying's mouth and tongue were already parched from explaining the secret order. She was busy eating fruits to replenish herself. She waved her hand when she heard Luo Nan's words, speaking vaguely. You already have the Hexa ear. Go take a look for yourself. I believe that Mr. Luo has already reached a certain level. He has even surpassed the level of a normal awakened. However, he is severely biased towards a certain field. He Yuan suddenly joined this topic and gave a relatively clear judgment. Zhang Yingying went, hey, and cried out. Let's not talk about this for now. How's the matter with the order? Luo Nan wanted to slap her. In the end, He Yuan was a bit more concerned about proper business. She responded, I've already notified the society. We'll be retreating for now. No way? What a strong start and a weak finish. Octopus, who was hurrying to adjust his medicine, raised his head. We're disbanding just like this? Actually, a certain order leader has already protested against the society's actions. We've interrupted their holy ritual. Octopus was shocked. We've been discovered? Luo Nan was quite baffled. How were we discovered? Cat eyes glared at him for no reason at all. So you're blaming me? Zhang Yingying's attention was focused elsewhere. Holy ritual? Here. She simply tossed away the fruit platter, spread her hands, and laughed out loud. She didn't know who was the one who said things like, fear of harming the innocent, just now. He Yuan responded in the calmest manner towards the different reactions of the people in the room. There's no reasoning to speak with those order leaders. And the methods of the secret order really do exceed common sense. In any case, we're dealing with the human-faced arachnid, not the secret order. This operation is halted and we're retreating. I will compile all matters into a brief and submit it to the society. It will be sent to everyone's hands. The speech this time was conducted through the psychic wave network. Immediately, the encrypted channel was filled with sighs and strange cries. Zhang Yingying raised her eyebrows. This order leader has jumped quite high. Are you sure they aren't colluding with the human-faced arachnid or something? What's their name? Show us. He Yuan didn't say anything. She just tilted her head and indicated for Zhang Yingying to look at the center of the room. There was a projection device in the shape of a lampstand. It was unknown when, but the burning pink glow of the lampstand had already disappeared. Instead, a new image appeared on the two sides of the edge. There were two sets of thin chains hanging down, each pulling a flat plate. One plate was black and the other was white. They were symmetrical and hung motionless in the air, forming the classic form of a scale. At this moment, Zhang Yingying grinned. She wanted to say something, but she didn't open her mouth in the end. Instead, Octopus let out a low cry. Chapter 80. Luo Nan looked at the group of people who were either shocked or had serious expressions. This time, Luo Nan didn't ask any more questions. He directly searched the Hexa ear for an answer. Through a mental search, the standard answer quickly jumped out. The Order of Justice was one of the 3 world-level secret orders. It was also the only secret order known to the world that worshipped a holy object. It didn't have a clear inclination towards worshipping a personified god. The highest leader of the order was called the First Oblatum. The holy object of the order was called the Scales of Truth. Its basic teachings were extremely vague. There were only a few words: the fairness of the world, the justice of truth. Within the order, they were passionate about sacrificial rituals. They were known to use a fair exchange to realize the balance of the world. Truthfully speaking, Luo Nan didn't understand half of it, even though he had seen some introductions. There were some conceptual things that needed to be understood individually. At this time, He Yueyin officially issued the order to retreat. After coming out of the private room, the temporary team had disbanded. He Yueyin was still extremely strict. She informed every member that they shouldn't linger near Sky Capital Water Village until the society came up with a new opinion. It was best not to act alone. Although the human-faced arachnid had been heavily injured by her format of fire and it might not be able to launch its next wave of attacks in a short amount of time, ability users who were alone were clearly the best tonic for it. "Oh my, I'm in such a sorry state." Bamboo Pole let out a sigh and said, "Good night, everyone," before logging off. The other avatars in the encrypted communications channel disappeared one after the other. Luo Nan took the initiative to call out to Octopus. He added this drug concoction expert as a friend, ready to ask for help at any time. At the same time, he sent a request to Cragburst and Cat Eyes. Cragburst was very straightforward and responded very quickly. But Cat Eyes snorted coldly and just left. Luo Nan shrugged. He could feel that Cat Eye's attitude towards him had become increasingly vile after they completed the psychic drawing together. "Hey, be careful. Cat Eyes holds a lot of grudges." Octopus had a pretty good impression of Luo Nan. He patted Luo Nan on the shoulder and left with Cragburst. Luo Nan felt quite innocent. What did he do to Cat Eyes? The initial backlash was caused by Cat Eyes using her ability to spy on his psychic process, summoning the heavily chained crow to counterattack. Or could it be said that the psychic senses of an awakened made her feel that a piece of her information had been dug out? "You must have been too rough." Zhang Yingying giggled as she patted his back. Don't be fooled by Cat Eyes' flirtatious appearance. In fact, I've never seen her have a boyfriend since she joined the guild. Maybe she's a reserved old virgin? Was this a joke a woman should make? Luo Nan was disinclined to pay attention. It was He Yueyin who turned around and unexpectedly joined the conversation. "Mr. Luo, regarding the matter of Cat Eyes, your previous etiquette was a bit inappropriate." In the process of creating the psychic diagram, Mr. Luo should have probed and used Cat Eyes' memories and subconscious. In a certain sense, this constitutes an infringement on her free will. Of course, Mr. Luo must have done it unintentionally, but it would be better to apologize afterwards. Luo Nan went, a bit embarrassed. He Yueyin continued to supplement his general knowledge in this area. As a spiritually strengthened ability user and psychic, Sir Luo will definitely encounter similar problems in the future. However, you just need to remember one thing. Ability users are extremely sensitive to free will, so prior communication and subsequent explanations are extremely necessary. Naturally, Luo Nan humbly accepted the teachings. At this moment, he thought of the evaluation that was interrupted by Zhang Yingying. It seemed that if he didn't clarify the situation now, he wouldn't have a chance today. "Sister He, you said I'm seriously biased." He Yueyin also thought of this matter. After a moment of silence she said, "If I were to evaluate Mr. Luo's ability on the mental plane, I would look at it from the effects of dealing with the human-faced arachnid. I will give you a C+, or even a B-. However, your body can only be an F, nothing more." Zhang Yingying laughed and said, "It can't be any less. Any less and I'll be a cripple." The corner of Luo Nan's mouth twitched. His body shouldn't be at this level. He had been training for many years. His toughness and agility should be above average. He Yueyin coldly shot a glance at Zhang Yingying and solemnly said, "The consequences of a serious imbalance between the mind and the body are 100 times more serious than being crippled. Be it the military or quantum holdings, there were countless bloody examples. The reason why I'm doing this is that I hope Mr. Luo can take this seriously." Zhang Yingying was unable to continue laughing. Luo Nan was also speechless. Since Mr. Luo mentioned the format before, let's talk about the format. I can understand the meaning of the format that Mr. Luo spoke of. It's different from the archetype format that I'm used to. It should pay more attention to individual characteristics. Is this right? Luonan thought for a moment and reluctantly nodded his head. He Yuan focused her gaze on Luonan. If you view the format as a type of building, artists can erect skyscrapers with toothpicks. Designers can complete a complete set of blueprints on the computer. But those are just models. They are just data. Truly practical buildings must be constructed using qualified and durable building materials. After all, the first essence of a building is practicality. If it's as Mr. Luo says, you possess an effective format. Then please choose the most suitable building materials for you and complete this building in a solid manner. This involves a complete transformation of your body's composition and mental willpower. It's absolutely not just visualization on the mental plane. If it's just data, then it's a bit better. But if it's an exquisite yet fragile piece of toothpick art that exists in the real world, it would collapse with a single breath. It would be meaningless. Aha! A toothpick-type man. Zhang Yingying clapped her hands in laughter. She didn't mind sprinkling salt on Luonan's wounds in the slightest. Who knew that He Yuan would change her target in the next moment? Miss Zhang, I know that you don't have any ill intentions towards Mr. Luo. But for a newcomer like him, your habitual jokes or exaggerated expressions are very easy to mislead. Just like with regards to the issue of secret orders, even though I don't like the way secret orders do things, I know that every secret order on record has a leader with an ability value of A. In the Society's 3 levels of ability system, Awakened, Engineer, and Extraordinary, they are at the top. They are powerhouses that stand at the peak of the world, and they also possess outstanding intelligence. They are absolutely not the powerful madmen that you speak of. You have a plan in mind, but it's very easy for you to cause Mr. Luo to misunderstand and form a wrong impression. For a psychic, this kind of wrong impression is very likely to be fatal. Zhang Yingying choked for a moment. Soon her eyebrows jumped up. She had made a mistake in her previous actions and received He Yuan's criticism. She had nothing to say. But right now, even her usual way of doing things had been reprimanded to the point of being useless. He Yuan, you really think too highly of yourself. Luonan felt that the atmosphere between the two was extremely tense, but it was all related to him. He felt a bit awkward for a time. Right when he was thinking about how to mediate, his wristband vibrated. Luonan's eyelids jumped when he saw the number. He rushed to connect. Auntie! Chapter 81. I'm still upstairs. Luonan was unable to mediate the conflict between the two ladies. He took 2 steps forward and responded in a low voice. There was no doubt that his aunt was waiting somewhere nearby, waiting for the cold dinner to end. Luonan didn't feel the slightest bit surprised at this sort of stalking behavior. His aunt had this sort of temperament. She was determined to bring him home tonight. She wouldn't give Luonan any reason to refuse. If it were a few days ago, Luonan would have done everything possible to escape his aunt's evil clutches. But right now, his drug production was in a state of shortage. There was nothing to do even if he returned to Blue Bay Community. His thoughts of refusing weren't that firm. Luonan resisted a few more times, but in the end, he threw in the towel and admitted defeat. I'm with a friend right now. I'll be down soon. Where are you, Aunt? I'll come find you in a bit. Admitting defeat to his aunt wasn't a big deal, but Luonan still had some reservations. The effects of the withdrawal reaction couldn't be ignored. Suddenly cutting off the drug supply could very well lead to some abnormal changes in his nervous system. His formatting had just shown results. What should he do if it regressed because of this? Luonan looked at the friend list on the Hexa ear and gained a bit of confidence. It seemed that he really did have an additional channel of choice after joining the society. Luonan first dealt with his aunt with grunts and then turned to ask Zhang Yingying. Octopus Bro is very good at making drugs. Does he sell them to the outside world? Zhang Yingying blurted out. Who are you harboring evil intentions towards? There was no way to communicate. Sister He, you just have to display your invincible might and correct her 3 distorted views. Luonan rolled his eyes. He felt that it was more appropriate to directly communicate with Octopus Bro. But Zhang Yingying wasn't happy. Probably because his expression was too obvious. She wrapped her arms around his neck. Hey, speak clearly. What the hell do you want? 9.5 out of 10 people who do business with Octopus Bro aren't good people. Oh, wait a minute. Zhang Yingying suddenly reached out and pulled at his face. Of course, Luo Nan wouldn't let her move, but this woman's strength far exceeded his by who knows how many levels. He was simply unable to resist. How many times had this happened? Luo Nan's face was flushed red. He was unable to suppress his anger. He Yueyin frowned and wanted to stop her, but Zhang Yingying looked as if she had let go of all past grievances. She called out to her, "Come, come, come. Let's take a look." I've always felt that the color of this kid's pupils was abnormal, as if he had taken too many drugs. Tell me, do you usually have this kind of bad habit? Why was he suddenly so sharp? Luo Nan was shocked. He forgot to struggle, and Zhang Yingying forced his eyelids open. However, what could she see under the dim lighting of the clubhouse? He Yueyin pulled Zhang Yingying's arm and said in a low voice, "Stop fooling around. We haven't left the church's territory yet." Luo Nan finally broke free from Zhang Yingying's grip, but he still clenched his teeth in depression. What was up with this woman's monstrous strength? In the eyes of an awakened, was his body so weak that it was close to being crippled? He secretly swore that he would communicate with Zhang Yingying again after he achieved the balance of his body and mind and truly became an awakened. In any case, after He Yueyin's interruption, Zhang Yingying didn't pursue the matter of him taking drugs. Luo Nan didn't want to stay with Zhang Yingying for a while. He wanted to leave, but he remembered that Xue Lei and Chen Xiaolin were still on the 81st floor. He had to go take a look at the situation. Luo Nan arrived at the floor without incident. He had just opened the elevator door when chaotic sounds came from the corridor. Luo Nan didn't care at first, but after a few steps, he saw figures scattered in front of him. There were waiters, medical staff, He Yueyin's bodyguards, and so on. They were conversing outside the door. Xue Lei, who was supposed to be lying in the room, had his head lowered as he leaned against the wall. He looked very dejected. Luo Nan had a good impression of this student who had a straightforward personality and high martial strength. After fighting side by side, the feeling was different. He immediately walked over and asked probingly, "Lei, are you okay?" Xue Lei raised his head when he heard the voice. His eyes lit up when he saw Luo Nan. "Nanster, are you okay?" "Just now." Sigh. Xue Lei didn't know where to begin with a multitude of things. In the end, he could only wave his hand, unable to continue. "What happened?" He Yueyin asked the bodyguard in charge of taking care of the patients. The bodyguard had a bitter smile on his face as he explained the situation that had occurred. Of the 3 patients, Xue Lei had only been knocked unconscious by He Yueyin. He didn't have any injuries, so he woke up the earliest. He was easy to talk to and was easily pacified. Then he went to take care of his unconscious girlfriend until the doctor He Yueyin invited arrived. Black Wolf's spine was fractured, so he was carried away for surgery early on. Chen Xiaolin was treated on the spot. Chen Xiaolin was fine when she didn't wake up. But when she woke up and saw Xue Lei, her emotions were agitated. She was afraid. She was angry. She was sad. She chased Xue Lei out of the room. She even alarmed the waiters on the floor. She lost control of her emotions? Luo Nan immediately thought of the human-faced arachnid. Clearly, He Yueyin was thinking the same thing. The two looked at each other and headed into the room. He Yueyin blocked him and Zhang Yingying took his place. The smile on this girl's face was much fainter. Her body had a clear and sharp aura. She was clearly ready to go. But after entering the room, Luo Nan's eyes were filled with nothing abnormal. Chen Xiaolin was in deep sleep on the bed. Aside from being weak, there were no traces of the human-faced arachnid. The 3 people exchanged glances. They were all a bit stunned. The doctor was very dissatisfied with the 3 people who suddenly squeezed in. "The patient has just been injected with a tranquilizer. She needs to rest." All unrelated people leave. He Yueyin confirmed with Luo Nan that the human-faced arachnid really didn't exist. Then she indicated to Luo Nan and Zhang Yingying to leave first. She stayed behind to talk with the doctor. He Yueyin walked out of the room after a few minutes. Luo Nan asked her, "What's going on?" Symptoms of stress. It's hard to understand facts that surpass one's common sense. Refusal to come into contact with facts, severe rejection, or selective forgetfulness. The members of the society often encounter these kinds of things. Zhang Yingying shrugged. I've long since suggested that the scope of common sense of ordinary people should be expanded in time to let them get used to accepting the existence of ability users. Humph humph. Mutants, those unscientific things, have been wreaking havoc for decades. Many people are still burying their heads in the sand. Luo Nan understood. So it turned out that Chen Xiaolin was unable to accept the sudden life and death battle between Xue Lei and the Black Wolf. Then there was the human-faced arachnid. And even the influence of Luo Nan's hypnosis technique. He Wayne suggested, it's better to let your friend go home first. He'll only make the patient more nervous if he stays by her side. Zhang Yingying shot a glance at the still dejected Xue Lei. This friend of yours is quite the material. His foundation is much better than yours. His adaptability is also quite strong. He should be the disciple of some martial arts master. Luo Nan approved of this conjecture. Xue Lei's reaction in the elevator was truly admirable. He even suspected that this big guy should have an intuitionistic response to the threat of the human-faced arachnid. However, Zhang Yingying was serious for less than 10 seconds before she began to run her mouth again. This pair is clearly bragging. Why don't I introduce your friend to the society? You can go to the society and find your own kind. This kind of sunny and strong man is definitely more popular than some toothpick guy. Luo Nan glared at her and asked He Yueyin about Chen Xiaolin's treatment situation. Then he walked towards Xue Lei. Senior Sister Chen doesn't have any problems. The doctor will take good care of her. We can't help much here anyway. Let's go home first. Xue Lei shook his head as expected. I'll wait here. Luo Nan pressed down on his arm. Senior Sister Chen will be sent to the hospital to receive follow-up treatment. She just needs to be quiet for a few days in this kind of situation. She also needs to be quiet for a bit. Let's go. It's getting late. My aunt's car is downstairs. She'll give you a ride. Xue Lei clearly hung his head even lower when he said the word, quiet. Luo Nan sighed and used a bit of strength to pull Xue Lei up. Of course, Xue Lei's mind was definitely shaken right now. Otherwise, how could he move? Luo Nan and Xue Lei left side by side after greeting He Yueyin, Zhang Yingying, and the others. They entered the elevator, and it just so happened to be the one where Xue Lei and He Lang had fought. Xue Lei stared blankly at the remnants of the collision marks on the inner walls of the elevator. He suddenly spoke. You guys aren't normal people, right? You're not either. It's fate. Chapter 82. Luo Nan's consciousness was like a pearl that had sunk into the cold depths of the sea. It was like a lonely star that hung in the dark void. Sometimes it sank into darkness, and sometimes it shone brightly. In the end, pure light and darkness determined their respective domains. All sorts of silhouettes and lines began to appear at the boundary between light and darkness. Pillows, bedside cabinets, table lamps, desk. From near to far, layer after layer expanded outwards. The simple concept and the familiar way of combining them formed a clearer meaning. Luo Nan made a judgment. He was in his own room, but he wasn't in the apartment in Blue Bay Community. Instead, he was on the east side of the second floor of his aunt's house. He had lived there for 5 years. Even more thoughts poured into his mind. Gear, human-faced arachnid, explorer's society. He Yueyin, Zhang Yingying, Xie Junping. All sorts of images and clues interweave to form a complete chain of cognition. Luo Nan finally found the node before he lost consciousness. The operation at Limestone Water Village pub had stopped. He sent Xue Lei home. Then he seemed to have fallen asleep in his aunt's car. Then what time was it? Just as this thought stirred, the wristband on his wrist, the table lamp clock on the bedside cabinet, and the flexible e-ink screen within the notebook all lit up at the same time. 2:27 in the morning. Ha! Luo Nan suddenly opened his eyes and sat up. But then his waist, thighs, and calves transmitted a feeling of tightness and soreness. His calves were as hard as iron and stone. They were cramping. Luo Nan sucked in a breath of cold air. He crossed his legs and kneaded them. It took a long time for him to recover. But his fingers and toes felt swollen and numb. His blood and energy were stagnant and blocked. His stomach and intestines were convulsing, making his throat feel a bit nauseous. This was, without a doubt, a withdrawal reaction. Such a situation was within Luo Nan's expectations. He composed himself and did his best to ignore it. The AI system sensed his continuous movements and confirmed that the owner of the room had woken up. The system had no intention of going back to sleep and automatically turned on the wall lights. Luo Nan turned his head to look all around. Various furnishings appeared in his field of vision. They were exactly the same as what he had sensed on the mental plane. Of course, the most important thing was that the current time was 2:29 p.m. Luo Nan's mental senses were clearly accurate without error when he was tormented by his drug withdrawal reaction. Luo Nan closed his eyes once more, clearing his distracting thoughts. Sure enough, a clear picture appeared in his mind. The range wasn't very far. When it passed through the room and reached the corridor, it became dark and indistinct. It had already reached its limit. Calculating, it was about a 5-meter radius. Compared to Cat Eye's long-range perception, it was nothing at all. But it must be known that Luo Nan could only use the heavily chained crow or use the out-of-body state in order to accomplish this. But now it was natural. It seemed like his body and spirit were also constantly adapting to this ability, integrating it into the most natural level. All right, he was no longer an ordinary person anymore. Luo Nan was just about to test out his new ability when a bloated figure tiptoed through the hallway at this time, entering the range of his senses. Luo Nan shook his head. He resisted the uncomfortable feeling of soreness throughout his body, got off the bed, walked to the door, and opened it. Hiss! The person passing by his door was so startled that her hair was about to float up. But soon, she was able to clearly see who it was under the light of Luo Nan's room. She handed over the enormous suitcase in her hands without the slightest trace of politeness. Help! Just by looking at the size of the suitcase, Luo Nan felt that his next cramp wasn't too far away. But he didn't say anything. He silently received the suitcase and then, under the guidance of the figure, he moved the suitcase downstairs as quietly as possible. Emoya got rid of the biggest burden and only carried a guitar case. She recovered her usual free and easy handsomeness. She lightly brushed away the messy hair on her forehead and didn't forget to issue orders. Be gentle. Don't turn on the lights when you're downstairs. They moved the suitcase to the living room with great difficulty, and refused the AI housekeeper's suggestion to turn on the lights. The two cousins sat on the sofa, panting. Emoya was Luo Nan's older cousin. She had an explosive figure, but she was used to wearing gender-neutral clothing. She was fortunate enough to inherit her father's handsome appearance. She wasn't like her mother, who had an average appearance. She had undergone a genetic mutation, growing to a height of 1.8 meters. She was currently the tallest person in the family. Right now, she was dressed in cowboy attire. Her legs were crossed, but her top leg was crossed over her knee, forming a smooth and proper large triangle. Her skin-tight jeans wrapped around her, revealing the fine and powerful lines of her body. It was enough to make over 70% of the girls scream and call her handsomeness. They would fall to the ground crying from jealousy. Luo Nan really was paralyzed on the sofa. Even moving a finger made him feel tired. I've returned the favor. Emoya frowned as she looked at him. You're too weak. You didn't just rely on eating pills to survive this month, right? How could that be? The amount of food I eat in a day is more like what you eat in a month. Then you slept for an entire day. How are you still this week? I slept at around 10 o'clock yesterday. Yesterday? It was the night before yesterday, okay? You slept like a dead pig in the car. It was me and Mo Peng who painstakingly carried you upstairs. Then I never saw you wake up again. Your biological mother even called a doctor. Luo Nan raised his hand to look at the date displayed on his wristband. September 30th. He was speechless for a time. Luo Nan reckoned that it was due to his drug withdrawal reaction and the fact that he had been working day and night for the past 2 days. He didn't want to be entangled with this problem. He changed the subject. Why did you run away in the middle of the night? Emoya snorted. Who ran away? I just went to Man City for a roadshow. It took a bit longer, that's all. Man City was a satellite town of Xia City. It was over 400 kilometers away from the city. It was already close to the edge of the city in the wilderness. Luo Nan frowned when he heard this. How many days? A month. I have to participate in a music festival. My aunt will kill you. She'll be bored by the time I get back. Emoya snorted disdainfully at this sort of threat. Moreover, it wasn't that easy for Luo Nan to change the topic. Hey, you suddenly came home. Did they give up? Clearly, Emoya was talking about the matter of making medicine. She was the only one in the entire family who roughly knew what Luonan had been up to these past few years. Luonan thought for a bit and laughed. No, I'm resting in stages. It's good that you know what to do. Emoya stood up and walked over to rub Luonan's head. Excellent. The little fellow is much calmer now. But don't pretend anymore. The car is here to pick me up. Get up and move the luggage for the future heavenly queen. Luonan groaned, but in the end he couldn't resist Emoya's forcefulness. He lifted the luggage once more and moved it outside like a thief. He walked out the front door of the house and saw a jet-black old-fashioned van parked outside the courtyard. There were also people waving. Though the sky was dark, Luonan was able to confirm that they were members of Emoya's band. This group of people. With great difficulty, Luonan stuffed the enormous luggage into the van that was already filled with musical instruments and people. Emoya could probably only sit on her own luggage. But Emoya didn't mind this at all. She gave Luonan a hug very straightforwardly. Do your best, bro. You can do it. Do your best too. Great Heavenly Queen. The old-fashioned van's lights turned on and it gradually drove out of the community. Luonan sent Moya off with his gaze, continuing to work hard for her dream. Chapter 83. Luonan had become a porter. His back was sore and his limbs were weak. His cramped calf showed signs of relapse. Under these circumstances, he was too lazy to even go up to the second floor. He walked to the living room and collapsed on the sofa. He didn't want to move at all. His body was half crippled, but his heart was inexplicably happy. He chuckled as he lay on the sofa. Luonan also saw himself when he saw Emoya like this. It sounded a bit painful, but to have a dream and to be on the path of pursuing it was something worth cherishing. Emoya's dream was to create a world-class band and to become the fully deserving lead singer of the Queen of Heaven. Up until now, her band had already gained a bit of fame in Xia City. They had also held 2 small-scale concerts and had begun to attract the attention of music companies. Perhaps she was still far from her ultimate goal, but when she sat in that crowded little box of goods and drove towards the music festival in Mantown, she was advancing on the road towards her dream of becoming a heavenly queen. Luonan had once been very envious of Emoya. They were both chasing after their dreams, but he spent 5 years of time without seeing any substantial progress. Luonan's dream was to let his grandfather's formatting theory defeat Yen Hong, that shameless distorter and plagiarist. He wanted it to be accepted by the world, become a prominent study, and restore the honor it deserved. This wasn't easy. Yen Hong had already fallen, but Quantum Corporation, one of the top 3 companies in the world by market value, possessed the results. They used this foundation to develop the Deep Blue platform, created the burners and changed the entire world. This supergiant was a nearly insurmountable obstacle that lay across the road ahead. If Luonan wanted to break through it head-on, he would need to become the apex scholar, possess the apex academic status, and have the support of the corresponding capital power. He would need to continuously produce superior results. With his age and accumulation, was this a goal that could be achieved within a few decades? Plus, Luonan wasn't a gifted researcher. He had stumbled with even the most basic replication experiments in the past 5 years. His accumulation of theory was pitifully small. He used himself as a guinea pig. It looked very decisive, but so what if he succeeded? At most, he would be a large lone piece of evidence that wouldn't be recognized. At most, some organizations would be interested in him, mulling over slicing him up for research. Luonan knew of insurmountable obstacles, but he rarely thought about them. Thinking too much would cause him to collapse. At that time, he felt like he was wandering at the intersection of a highway. Staring at the traffic, he felt envious, but he couldn't blend in at all. Emoya and the others still had a container truck, but what he had was just a small body sculpted from medicine. He didn't even have the qualifications to go on the road. But now, the situation had taken a miraculous turn. Luonan's consciousness focused on his left ear. There was a small and exquisite electronic device stuck to his ear canal. The Hexa ear. This little thing from the Wilderness Explorers Association had a miraculous function, but only those with a certain level of strength could activate it. Moreover, depending on one's strength, the level of the function would be different. Luonan needed to activate the heavily chained crow the moment he first came into contact with it. Only then was he able to realize the functions on the computer level. But after 30 hours of sleep, His body and mind had inexplicably adapted to the relevant abilities. At this moment, he only needed to slightly concentrate his mind, and he had already triggered the function of the hexa ear and successfully connected to the psychic wave network. The interface of his retina opened, and he entered the homepage that seemed to be in the wilderness. Luo Nan wasn't unfamiliar with these kinds of changes. Back when he constructed the container format, he obtained the two abilities of Glutton King and Hypnotist. At first, he needed a high degree of concentration to be able to activate them. But not long after, the activation of these two abilities became natural. He didn't need to make any deliberate movements at all. They completely merged into his flesh and blood genes. Yes, it seemed that he had transformed his active skills into passive skills. He carried a halo with him, and he practically didn't need to consume any mana. Of course, concentration and energy were still indispensable in order to activate the deeper applications. This point was quite interesting, but it wasn't the main focus of Luo Nan's attention right now. He immediately received a notification when he logged onto the society's homepage. Among them were messages from He Yueyin and Zhang Yingying. There were also 2 emails from the society's channels. Zhang Yingying's message looked like it was purely to chat with him. She stopped after discovering that he hadn't come online all this time. He Yueyin told him to reply as soon as he got online. She reminded him to receive the briefing from the society's channels. Inside was an evaluation of the operation at the Limestone Water Village pub on the night of the 28th. Luo Nan looked at the time. It was the middle of the night. How could he disturb someone's sweet dreams at this time? He wasn't in a hurry to contact He Yueyin. Instead, he first checked the 2 emails from the society. One of them was an official confirmation letter welcoming him into the professional society. The other was the briefing that He Yueyin had brought up. He first opened the confirmation letter. There were stylized words inside. It was an expression of welcome for Luo Nan to join the Wilderness Explorers Society. The contents were probably the same for every new member of the society. The only difference was the basic personal information feedback form submitted at the time of registration. Some items required the society to confirm and adjust them. After adjusting, the form would be sent back to the new member for further confirmation. Luo Nan was disinclined to pay attention to the other items. He just stared at the ability source section. Right now it displayed System Flow. Luo Nan subconsciously shook his arm. But then he discovered that there was a special asterisk marking behind this item. When he shifted his consciousness over, a piece of information appeared. This item is currently in doubt. It is recommended that the new member contact the Society's cultivation department to undergo the relevant cultivation system evaluation and registration work. If the conditions are met, the new member can obtain the qualifications to teach. Luo Nan raised his eyebrows. The word in doubt made him a bit unhappy. But he had to admit that compared to the difficult circumstances of the past 5 years, the current him, I'm on my way. This was an organization that borrowed the name of the Wilderness Explorers Society. In reality, it was an ability user professional society. It was just like its core. What it valued was ability and effectiveness. Just like Luo Nan's identity as a psychic and the corresponding treatment. As long as he used irrefutable facts to prove his worth, he would naturally become the core of the society's tactics. He would also easily erase the doubts of those arrogant and unruly fellows. After all, in the domain of ability users, the strong and the weak, the high and the low were all placed on the surface. They were direct and straightforward. Academics? Status? Capital? At least Luo Nan had yet to see the influence of these factors up until now. And these were the most difficult obstacles for him to overcome. In this way, he just needed to use reality to prove himself. Chapter 84. Luo Nan used the psychic wave network to search for information related to the evaluation of the cultivation system. He saw the association's definition of a cultivation system. It was a complete and operational cultivation sequence from beginner to advanced. It ensured that a certain number of ordinary people could pass through this cultivation sequence to become an awakened, or even an ability user of a higher level. Luo Nan's focus was on the awakened. It seemed that the most basic condition to confirm a system was that someone could pass through the system to become an awakened. Then he was still a bit lacking. And frankly speaking, he didn't have a particularly clear train of thought on how to become an awakened. From this point of view, it was no wonder that Zhang Yingying was so disdainful of his insistence on the system-type judgment. Of course, Luo Nan didn't believe that this was a flaw in his grandfather's theory. The theory he grasped, including the related methods, were all obtained from a notebook. His grandfather had made thousands of similar notebooks throughout his life. Moreover, there were even more important research results that were stored in the Wilderness Laboratory. The Wilderness Laboratory changed owners during the time of the lawsuit. Most of the relevant notes were lost. The book that Luo Nan grasped was not worth mentioning in the face of the huge amount of research data. But the reason why Yen Hong was able to grasp the relevant theory and produce results so quickly was because he had obtained a considerable portion of the important data. As for why Yen Hong was able to obtain the data, Luo Nan knew that it was because of his own father, that coward. During the most critical stage of his grandfather's lawsuit, that coward took out his grandfather's research results without authorization. He reached a sort of settlement with Yen Hong and the team behind him, exchanging for a light sentence for his grandfather and successfully getting rid of the lawsuit on his own body. But in reality, his grandfather's schizophrenia was already extremely serious. It was impossible for the court to make a particularly harsh sentence. In the end, that coward was only trying to get rid of his own crime. This was a betrayal. Luo Nan firmly believed. Not only did he betray his grandfather, he betrayed his mother who had always supported their research and died because of it. Luo Nan's heart felt stuffy every time he thought of this. He had such a great grandfather, such a great mother, but at the same time, he was the son of a coward and a traitor. Luo Nan took a deep breath. His previous good mood was completely destroyed by the sudden memories. He tried to look at some more information about the society, but he was unable to calm his mind. Seeing that it was still early, Luo Nan decided to go out and train. Speaking of which, it had been 2 days since he had completed a marathon. He also had to verify how much the withdrawal reaction affected his body. Luo Nan stood up and was just about to change his clothes when a new message suddenly came from the psychic wave network. It was a direct call. Mr. Luo? Sister He? Luo Nan looked at his watch. It was just past 3 in the morning. It seemed that He Yueyin was also a person who didn't sleep much. You didn't come online the day before. You seem to have entered a deep sleep state? I slept for 30 hours. Luo Nan was a bit embarrassed. He Yueyin said, psychics consume a lot of energy. Sleeping for a long time is the most common way to recover. Time isn't a problem, but whether or not one's energy is restored is the most important thing. Yes, I'm in good spirits now. Other than withdrawal symptoms. Sister He, you wake up so early every day. Are you still awake? Burners only need about 2 hours of quiet rest every day. I usually choose to rest at midnight. The two of them chatted for a bit before He Yueyin took the initiative to cut to the chase. I noticed that you just received a message. Did you see the briefing? I saw it. Luo Nan was embarrassed to say that he hadn't seen it yet. He hurriedly opened the briefing. Luckily, the contents weren't too complicated. He could see that He Yueyin's writing style was always serious and straightforward. She bluntly mentioned the failure of the operation this time. She criticized the society's intelligence gathering, the cooperative tactics of the participants, and so on. She didn't hide anything because it was an official document for the society. He Yueyin had already mentioned a lot of the contents during the operation on the 28th. Luo Nan picked the more unfamiliar contents to read. He read 10 lines at a glance and more or less understood the relevant contents. He Yueyin's voice continued to transmit over. The society has already approved of this briefing and has issued an evaluation for the participants of the operation. Mr. Luo, you are the only B-. According to the relevant provisions of the society, you will receive a certain amount of honor points. Luo Nan rushed to look at the society's evaluation at the very bottom of the briefing. The contents regarding him were: a new member of the society. He used a keen and calm attitude to complete his debut. He made a human-faced arachnid unable to hide and displayed his role as a cornerstone. If he had been a commander and not a bait, his performance would have been even more perfect. There was a +4 symbol below the evaluation. This meant that his honor points had increased by 4 points. As for the others, He Yueyin had the highest score of 3 points. She had obtained a C+ evaluation. It could be considered that she did not fail. Her merits and demerits offset each other. The rest had a string of ones. There were even zeros. The unlucky black wolf was one of them. The other was Black Beetle, who had left the team midway. It looked pretty good. He Yuan reminded him at this time. Honor points are very useful within the society. I hope that you can use them carefully. Sister He, do you have any suggestions? Luo Nan had a lot of confidence in He Yuan's abilities right now. He directly asked her for guidance. He Yuan said, I've just entered the society. Moreover, the path of a burner is different from yours. I recommend that you understand the society a bit more before making your choice. A.B. Evaluation and 4 points are already quite impressive for a newcomer. You must display your greatest value. Luo Nan naturally received the advice. And the B- evaluation made Luo Nan think of He Yuan's evaluation that night. She also gave Luo Nan a B evaluation on the mental plane. But she only gave him an F on the fleshly body plane. This seemed to be an important obstacle for Luo Nan to become an awakened. Luo Nan couldn't help but ask, what should I do if I want to temper my body and achieve a balance between my mind and body? Do I become an awakened when my fleshly body and mind achieve a balance? I'm still unable to give you too good a suggestion on this point. After all, the military's burners started with alterations. However, I've heard that the society has a training method specifically provided for members of the mentally enhanced. He Yuan was extremely patient. She answered every question. Mr. Luo needs to be clear on this concept. Since it's called awakening, the key is certainly a change in one's understanding. Whether it's training the fleshly body or cultivating the mind, they are just supplementary methods. They help the fleshly body and the mind to truly experience and sense this world. They help to better explain one's strength. The society has a sort of awakening ceremony. It has a similar function. Chapter 85. He Yuan's reply was filled with her straightforward and practical style. Too many people wouldn't like it, but Luo Nan could accept it. Achieving a balance between the fleshly body and the mental, pure and practical goals made it easier to concentrate. But He Yuan sent another message right after. It was a form with the words, Hexa-ear Emergency Function Training Plan, written on it. Hexa-ear? Luo Nan was stupefied for a moment before he remembered that He Yuan had mentioned this line that night. Now even the plan was laid out? There's no need. It wasn't just that he was afraid of trouble. After 30 hours of sleep, his adaptability to his new ability gave Luo Nan quite a bit of confidence. He felt that even if he didn't use the heavily chained crow, maintaining a 24-hour connection shouldn't be a problem. He Yuan didn't give in easily. Mr. Luo, the use of the Hexa-ear isn't just common sense. It is also a skill. Even when you reach the awakened level, you still need to practice it frequently. Especially right now, the threat of the human-faced arachnid is far from being eliminated. You need to maintain a close connection and not give it an opportunity to take advantage. Luo Nan grunted and finally thought of the human-faced arachnid. He seized the opportunity to change topics. Oh right. Is there any news on the human-faced arachnid? How's the situation with the encirclement and suppression? Not too good. He Yuan's attention was drawn away, but he could hear the seriousness in her voice. Up until now, the society, the military, and Quantum Corporation have handled a total of 11 related incidents. 4 cases have been resolved and 7 cases have failed. In addition, there are still 3 cases that haven't been determined to be the work of the human-faced arachnid. Out of the 14 incidents, 5 people died, 1 was seriously injured, and 67 people suffered serious mental trauma. This was simply a complete rout. Luo Nan wanted to cover his forehead when he heard this. Before he joined the society, he had a bit of reverence towards this organization hidden in the dark side of the human world. But now it seemed that they were in dire straits. How could this young man, who harbored dreams of joining, endure? He Yuan seemed to sense Luo Nan's thoughts. She spoke softly. When the dark side of life forms first appeared, the government, the military, and the ability user society were in a much more difficult situation than they are now. Later, they paid a considerable price and developed a series of tactics to barely control the situation. The current situation is different. The dark side of life forms invading the metropolis is a problem that we have been trying our best to avoid. But this time, the situation had gone out of control, and their efforts over the past 2 years had been ruined. It will definitely take some time to regain control. Luo Nan blurted out, Then how will Quantum Corporation be handled? Nan, what are you talking about? His aunt's voice suddenly rang out. Then the living room lights turned on, illuminating Luo Nan's silhouette on the sofa. At the top of the stairs, Madame Luo Shuqing frowned and stared at him in her pajamas. I made a mistake. Luo Nan's application of the hexa ear was indeed lacking in tempering. It was clearly an application on the mental plane, but he forgot himself for a moment and simply vomited. However, he did not know if there was a similar problem in front of him. He Yuan also noticed the surprise on his end and took the initiative to end the call. Once you confirm the training schedule, send it to me. Luo Nan didn't have the face to refuse at this time. He could only acquiesce. Of course, the most important thing now was to deal with his aunt's questions. He stood up, but he forgot about his body and almost sprained his waist again. He took a deep breath and tried to think of an excuse. I just woke up and a classmate was online, so we chatted. I really slept for a long time. Madame Luo Shuqing walked over, her brows still furrowed. Did you not rest well over at Blue Bay? Nope, it was pretty good. Luo Nan's eyes didn't even blink when he said this sort of lie. His usual dullness was a very good cover. However, Madame Luo Shuqing was far too familiar with him. You don't sleep even after midnight. You live by yourself. How can you handle it? Luo Nan knew that he couldn't continue being entangled. He lowered his head to look for his shoes. Aunt, it's too early. You should go sleep a bit more. I can't sleep anymore. I might as well go exercise. Who goes for a 3 o'clock run? Madame Luo Shuqing coldly stabbed at him. She then sat on the sofa and patted the spot next to her. I'm already this old. I can't sleep anymore. Come, accompany me for a chat. Come on. I wanted to ask you. Do you have any fixed social circles at school? Your friend from that day was called Shuelei, right? He looks like a kind and honest person. Luo Nan knew that he could no longer escape. He could only sigh to himself and obediently return to endure a new round of torture. A full 2 hours passed, and Luo Nan chatted with his aunt from 3 to 5. Finally, Luo Nan obtained permission to go for a morning jog. It was as if he had been granted amnesty. He used the fastest speed to change into his clothes and shoes, and he left the house without looking back. It wasn't that he wasn't filial. It was just that as time passed, there was a risk that Moya would be exposed for leaving home in the middle of the night. Usually, Moya would wake up to practice her voice at this time. It was better to get away from this troublesome place. Luo Nan calculated the time until it was almost 8 o'clock. He reckoned that the first round of the battle between mother and daughter had already ended. Only then did he turn around and return home. He hadn't had much time to train in the outside world for 3 hours. His body was in a terrible state due to the withdrawal symptoms, and he couldn't withstand too much energy consumption. Luo Nan found a park to properly familiarize himself with the prison format, the heavily chained crow, the wraith sign, and various other elements. He wanted to see what sort of changes would occur to his body after the adaptation period. He didn't gain anything in the past 3 hours, but when he returned home, he was greeted with his aunt's anger as expected. Luo Nan, look at what you've done. As an accomplice, it was impossible to hide this sort of thing. The AI system would faithfully provide all of the surveillance footage for his aunt to choose and appraise. Luo Nan knew that he didn't need to explain anything at this time. He just needed to lower his head and take the scolding. In any case, it would be mealtime soon. Dinner's ready. Cool down. First fill your stomach. Over at the dining room, his uncle, Mo Haihang, sat down first. He scooped a bowl of porridge and side dishes for himself. He drank it unhurriedly, tasted a few mouthfuls, and nodded. Today's millet is quite sticky. Next time I'll buy this one. Mo Haihang. His aunt's firepower shifted in an instant. However, his uncle remained calm and collected. Since you know where she is and where she's going, how could you lose her? Just endure it for now. You can scold her when you get back. If it were anyone else, such an exaggerated statement might just be the fuse for a family war. However, his uncle was one of the few people who had the qualifications to say such things. As a senior technical member of the SCA, Mo Haihang had already worked in this authority department known as the Social Credit Administration for nearly 20 years. In this modern society where credit had completely replaced the function of currency, the SCA was the witness and administrator of all credit. It was also responsible for auditing the corresponding granting of authority. It could be said to be the hottest authority department. Chapter 86. Luo Shuqing didn't say much about her husband's stubbornness. She just sneered. Is this something that can't be thrown away? Your arrogant and willful daughter. In any case, Luo Nan was able to temporarily leave the battlefield thanks to his uncle's diversion of fire. He went upstairs to change his clothes and wash up. Who knew that there would be many things to do this morning? He had just finished showering and changed his clothes when a message came from the Hexa. It was from an unfamiliar number. Luo Nan thought for a bit and chose to answer. He was just about to ask when the other side spoke. Fuck you. Luo Nan was stunned for a moment. Which psycho? The society had this kind of person? Then the voice on the other side clearly lost control and shouted, Go hide in that mechanical woman's crotch. I'll show you guys sooner or later. This person sounded like he was drunk. His words weren't very clear and they were all filled with profanities. A long string of curses was spilled in less than half a minute. Luo Nan finally reacted at this time. Mechanical woman. Was this referring to He Yuan? Then it was related to the operation on the 28th. He quickly made a guess when he saw the other side's vile attitude. He looked at the avatar and sure enough, Black Beetle? Wasn't this fellow the one who couldn't take He Yuan's criticism that night and left the team halfway? He and the unlucky Black Wolf were given 0 points in the society's evaluation report. Now it seemed that this person's personality was vile enough. There really were all sorts of people in the society. Even Buddha would get angry after being showered in the face with profanities, let alone Luo Nan. He frowned and replied, A blatant threat with an intense attitude. Can I assume that you're being controlled by the human-faced arachnid? The other side was suddenly stifled by this accusation. Then he gritted his teeth and said, Kid, don't think that being a psychic is amazing. Let's play slowly in the future. Luo Nan responded coldly, I'll keep you company any time. The two sides hung up and Luo Nan discovered that he had spat out a mouthful of saliva due to his impulsiveness. He patted his cheeks lightly and stuck his head out from the staircase. It was very quiet downstairs. The husband and wife were still looking at each other. It seemed that his aunt's anger had yet to dissipate. He let out a breath of relief and walked down the stairs. Uncle and aunt turned their faces in unison when they saw Luo Nan come down. Uncle indicated for Luo Nan to sit down. Come eat. The millet porridge is nice to drink while it's hot. Mo Haihang had been working in the government for many years. Although he was not tall, he had a serious expression and was usually taciturn. He did not look friendly. But in fact at home, he was the standard cook. As long as they were at home, he would take care of all 3 meals from morning till night. It wasn't that he was henpecked or anything like that. It was just that his aunt's culinary skills had been the same for decades. He really didn't dare to compliment her. As for her 2 children, Moya had perfectly inherited her aunt's powerful talent and unparalleled culinary skills. Although she dared to cook, no one dared to eat it. There was also Mo Peng, Luo Nan's older cousin of the same age. It wasn't even 10 o'clock on a weekend morning. How was it possible for him to get up? The family ate breakfast together, and they didn't even bother to call him. It was probably because of Moya's extremely serious behavior of running away from home that the atmosphere at the dining table had been low for a long time. Uncle had seen this kind of situation many times, so he calmly ate his porridge and watched the news. Luo Nan wasn't in a good mood to talk, so he just kept his head down and ate. His appetite was there. Plain porridge and side dishes were certainly not enough to satisfy him. Uncle had considered this point when he cooked. Beef was paired with nutritional supplements, and he was guaranteed to eat until he was full. It was reasonable to say that this was a very normal breakfast for the Mo family, even though it had been a month since the incident. But Luo Nan felt a bit strange today. It was because his mental senses were spread out at all times. Even if he lowered his head, he could still see his aunt and uncle exchanging glances. It seemed to be a bit too frequent. Was it like this in the past? Or was his mental state too sensitive today? Seeing that he was more or less done eating, his aunt suddenly opened her mouth. You Luo Nan. Aunt, nothing going on today, right? Nothing. Then let's go to On High together. Let's go see your grandfather. Luo Nan was clearly stunned. Then he responded with a resounding voice. Okay. But he was a bit worried in the blink of an eye. Grandpa's condition isn't good again? No, don't make blind guesses. Aunt tapped her chin. Go. You clean up today. Luo Nan had no objections. On High Medical Center was a very famous sanatorium for mental illnesses in Xia City. It was located in the outskirts of Xia City, nearly 200 kilometers away from the main city district. It was approximately an hour's drive. Every time the family went on an outing, the front passenger seat was a golden treasure trove. No one wanted to receive his aunt's advice in the rear compartment. This time Luo Nan seized the seat before the sleepy Mo Peng could. He let out a sigh of relief when he got in the car. An hour's drive could be said to be long, but it could be said to be short. From Mo Peng's perspective, it was clearly very long. But Luo Nan had a lot of things to do to pass the time. He opened his portable notebook and looked at the interface of the flexible e-ink screen. Right now, the newly appeared visualization icon was still in the download state. Over 30 hours had passed and the progress had only reached 2%. Well, it was all thanks to this, too. Otherwise, he would have thought that it was stuck. Luo Nan was unable to estimate just how much information he had dug out from the body of the human-faced arachnid. Or perhaps the external neuron's analysis speed was limited after it left the laboratory's abundant energy. Luo Nan looked at the battery capacity of the flexible e-ink screen. There was still around half of it left. This was already an extraordinary consumption, but it was nothing compared to the independent power station of Gear's laboratory. He could give it a try when he got to school tomorrow. Luo Nan opened the drawing software and directly entered the second layer interface. A 5-layer structure of students, staff, technicians, clergymen, and politicians appeared. But then he frowned. Was it a misconception? Did he feel that the interface had become dirty? It was inexplicably a bit dark, and it was even a bit trembling. Before he could take a closer look, his uncle in the driver's seat turned his head. You're researching the societal format diagram? Oh, you switched to a flexible screen. This driver of his was quite idle under the autopilot mode, and his gaze was quite sharp. Luo Nan grunted, wanting to vaguely brush it off. But Luo Nan's uncle curled his lips. In '79, I was forced by a certain someone to start a research project on the Bureau's supercomputer. I built a format diagram model for him, using 30 years of Xia City's authority and credit data. In the end, I was punished, and I was reprimanded by your grandfather for trying to fish from a tree. These are all things that happened before my eyes. Luo Nan knew that the certain someone was referring to his father, Luo Zhongheng. It seemed that Luo Nan's uncle and his father had a pretty good relationship. These past few years, Luo Nan had always been trying to correct Luo Nan's impression of his father. But it was useless to say these things. Luo Nan would never forgive a coward who used his grandfather's blood, sweat, and tears to exchange for freedom, then disappeared without a trace. He grunted in response, not wanting to say anything. In the back, Mo Peng saw his old man open his mouth and discovered a good opportunity to break free from his mother's low-pressure domain. He slid his seat forward and forcefully inserted himself. Chapter 87. Mo Peng's short and fat body moved forward like a fat groundhog. Luo Shuqing, who was behind him, couldn't bear to look at him and coldly stared at him. If you are ignorant and incompetent, then don't speak without thinking. How am I ignorant and incompetent? Are you saying that my A's in all 7 subjects are just there for you to trample on? Mo Peng had a wronged expression on his face. He clearly wanted to liven up the atmosphere. How did he get such a reputation? It was his father who knew him well. He knew that he couldn't stand the pressure of his menopausal mother, and was just here to join in the fun. He casually explained and brought him into the circle of discussion. Student and staff are just code names. They have their own specific meanings. Are you not interested in them? As long as he could hide from this old lady, he would be interested in anything. Mo Peng was thick-skinned. He chuckled and said, "Isn't there one now? Back then, you chased after me and wanted to instill this thing in me. Now that the seed has sprouted." He snatched the notebook from Luo Nan's hands as he spoke. He saw the flexible e-ink screen interface and was stunned. What effect is this? It looks like I'm soaking in water. Mo Peng's description was extremely apartment. Right now, the second layer of the drawing software's interface seemed to be submerged in muddy river water. The 5-story tower structure that was close to the diagram of Maslow's hierarchy of needs was practically completely submerged in the water. It looked as if there was a layer of dusky membrane separating it from the rest of the cards. The sketches that Luo Nan had created were even more blurry and indistinct. Luo Nan didn't know what was going on, but he had a faint feeling that this sort of scene was related to his own ability. He didn't want to discuss it further, so he took the notebook back and closed it. It's nothing, it's just a screensaver. The effect of this lie was very touching. However, Mo Peng was very clear about Luo Nan's awkward temperament. He knew that Luo Nan didn't want to talk about it, so he didn't ask. He still used the social format diagram as a life-saving straw. Brother Master. Imparting knowledge and dispelling doubts refers to you. Tell me, what do those code names mean? Grass is growing in my heart. Luo Nan glanced at his uncle. Luo Nan was currently adjusting the car's AI function. It seemed that he no longer participated in the conversation between youngsters. On the other hand, his aunt, who was sitting in the back seat, was looking at them quietly with a dazed expression. The atmosphere in the carriage was a little subtle. Luo Nan thought for a bit and spoke in a soft voice. The original intent of establishing this model was to explain the effects of an individual on the social format and the structure of relationships. Social format? Mo Peng was stunned. Fortunately, he was the grandson of the Luo family. Even if he was not interested in formatting theory, he still had some basic concepts. It refers to the structure of society, right? The collective composition and way of existence of human beings that affects individuals and changes nature? Luo Nan gave Mo Peng a thumbs up when he heard this. Though it wasn't that precise, it saved Luo Nan a lot of talking. Every country, tribe, region, and human collective must have their own specific social structure. Through this format, a steady stream of new social individuals would be produced. At the same time, nature would be transformed and new resources would be obtained to provide for the existence and operation of the society. Every social individual will be branded with the social format, and to a certain extent, will produce a counterforce to the social format. Students refer to learners. They can only accept the one-way indoctrination of the social format. They are not considered complete social individuals and are unable to be of any use. Employees refer to workers. They are the basic social individuals. They possess a certain ability to survive independently and maintain the basic operation of the social format. Technicians refer to promoters. Their advantage over employees lies in the fact that they can already optimize the social format and increase the efficiency of the operation of the format. Clergymen refer to the enlightened. They have a relatively complete understanding of the social format and begin to consciously utilize the power of the social format. Politicians refer to the innovators. They are the higher-level enlightened. While utilizing the social format, they also carry out a conscious transformation of the format in an attempt to maximize the benefits. Mo Peng was worthy of being an excellent student with all 7 grades. He immediately spoke when he heard this. It sounds like a certain variant of the theory of hierarchy. Then the question is, what is the basis for dividing these classes and strata? Is there a unified standard? Luo Nan was silent when he heard this. He felt the gaze of his uncle from the side at this time. He raised his head and their gazes met. He revealed a bitter smile. The standard is me. I am the standard. Luo Yuandao picked up a rectangular block of wood in the independent ward of Anhai Sanatorium Center. He gently placed it on the wall that was half the height of a person in front of him. His fingers were trembling. The various diseases of his nervous system had pretty much destroyed his body. His originally tall stature had already collapsed. His entire body was just skin and bones. He was completely emaciated and deformed. He appeared to be incomparably weak. Luo Yuandao wasn't even 80 years old this year. In this day and age, he could be considered to have just entered old age. Some people hadn't even retired yet. However, he was already infinitely close to the end of his life. Even though he was still stubbornly standing, he was still constructing his work. Even though his fingers and arms were trembling, when the building blocks fell to their positions, they were all upright and seamless. He was able to obtain this result because he had been controlling it back and forth for nearly half an hour. He was determined not to let go until he obtained the final perfect result. A smile appeared on his withered and dry face. It was clear that Luo Yuandao was extremely satisfied with the structure in front of him. In fact, it wasn't just in front of him. All around him were short walls made from building blocks. Luo Nan and Mo Peng could only talk to him through the short walls. The high-level nurse next to Luo Yuandao was a very patient middle-aged woman surnamed Hong. She saw that the building blocks had been placed, so she asked him softly from the other side, "Old man, this piece is done. Let's take a break?" Luo Yuandao ignored her. He was in a good mood, so he wasn't stingy in answering his grandson's questions. He grinned like a gigantic laughing skeleton. "I created the theory. Of course it uses me as the standard. It must serve me. Haven't you heard? All things are for me. My heart is the universe. I am the common lord of all things. I am the center of the universe." Mo Peng turned his head away a bit awkwardly. It was really hard for a normal person to endure this stubborn and crazy old man's logic. Right now it was very difficult for him to endure it. His parents, who were always by his side in the past, seemed to have gone to consult about the old man's condition. They weren't here, so he didn't even dare to speak. He felt more and more uncomfortable. However, what made Mo Peng feel even more uncomfortable was that his cousin, who was standing next to him, seemed to be very engrossed. He was even a bit fanatical. "Oh my God!" Luo Yuandao picked up another building block and raised it in front of his eyes. He continued his lecture. "I possess the principles of heaven and earth. I can bestow the roots of all things. Just like this block of wood. It can be square, but it can also be round. Square and round are nothing more than external appearances. I can even change its internal root nature. What's so special about its external appearance? I used it to construct this temple. This is my domain. If I want it to be square, then it will be square. If I want it to be round, then it will be round." The building block fell as he spoke. But this time, he was too excited from speaking. He didn't place it in the right place, so it fell all of a sudden. Luo Yuandao reached out his hand to grab it by reflex. His weak body couldn't maintain its balance and he fell straight forward. Chapter 88. Nurse Hong rushed over and helped Luonan straighten up the old man. She said over and over, "It's okay. It's okay. There's cushioning equipment to prevent falling." It was unknown whether these words were meant to comfort others or to comfort herself. Luonan carefully supported his grandfather's shoulder, not daring to touch his arm. He felt that the old man's arm was as thin as a hemp stick. He could break it with just a bit of force. But Luonan felt his chest sink a bit at this time. Luo Yuandao's hemp stick-like arm was pressing against his chest, pushing him away. Luonan remembered that his grandfather didn't like other people to have physical contact with him. He didn't dare to resist. He saw that Nurse Hong was already in place, so he took advantage of the situation and retreated, pulling apart the distance. Luo Yuandao laughed at this time. His vocal cords rubbed out a hoarse laugh, revealing a strange feeling of joy. "You may have destroyed my shrine, but you can't stay in my country for long." On the other side, Mo Peng, who was a bit slow in reacting, didn't make it in time to rescue the old man. He finally couldn't help but touch his forehead with his palm to alleviate the awkwardness. Luonan didn't care about his grandfather's strange train of thought. He saw that the loose-leaf notebook that had been clamped under his elbow had fallen onto the messy rubble of building blocks. He bent over to pick it up. His fingertips had just touched the cover when he heard a low roar. "My spoils of war!" Luonan was stunned for a moment. A shadow swept over him. If he hadn't instinctively leaned back and Mo Peng pulled him, he would have been swept by Luo Yuandao's toes. Nurse Hong controlled the old man's balance in a flurry. Her mouth was constantly comforting him. "Old man, the spoils of war are still here. They're still here." She hurriedly gave Luonan and Mo Peng a meaningful glance. The two could only retreat and pull apart the distance when they saw this. "Bring it over. Give it to me." Luo Yuandao clearly looked a lot crazier than before, but his spirit was strangely vigorous. He was giving orders to people. Nurse Hong was adjusting the balance device. She couldn't free her hands for a time, so she indicated for Luonan to come forward. "It's fine. Old man, 1 yard at a time." In other words, he had already reached the stage of lacking logic? Luo Nan took a deep breath and suppressed the sourness in his heart. He walked forward to pick up the notebook. Luo Yuandao reached out to take it. The weight of the thick notebook was a bit too heavy for him. He trembled when he received it with one hand. Special Nurse Hong wanted to help but was rudely rejected. Although his arms were trembling and it looked like he would fall at any moment, he still flipped open the book and scanned through its contents. He knew that Luo Yuandao's current mental state was at a completely incomprehensible level. But at this time, Luo Nan's heart had the apprehension of handing in homework. He stared at the old man, wanting to see what the result would be. Bullshit! Bullshit! Luo Yuandao had a face of disdain when faced with the messy lines that Luo Nan had hastily drawn. In a sense, this was the most normal reaction. Luo Nan couldn't say what he was feeling in his heart. But in the next second, Luo Yuandao's movements froze. His gaze stopped on the paper, and his eyes seemed to focus. At this moment, he flipped to the page where the prison sketch had been messed up. For a full 5 seconds, Luo Yuandao did not move at all. Luo Nan's heart suddenly skipped a beat. He stared at his grandfather's face, which had already lost its form. Traces of weak flames of hope suddenly ignited within him. He leaned forward a bit, trying to see his grandfather's reaction a bit more clearly. Luo Yuandao cast a sidelong glance when he felt Luo Nan's movements. He suddenly said, "You've grown up." Luo Nan's heart thumped. He couldn't help but think, can he see it? He can understand. Luo Nan couldn't help but move forward again, but a withered arm pressed against his chest once more. Then, Luo Nan saw a pair of crazed and ice-cold eyes. "You've come to kill me, grandfather." Luo Nan's heart suddenly clenched, but he was pushed away by Luo Yuandao with great force. Luo Nan staggered and nearly fell down on the messy building blocks under his feet. Luo Yuandao was even more furious when he saw Luo Nan trampling on the building blocks. "My shrine! You're plundering my divine kingdom. My students, my employees, my technicians, my priests, my politicians. Mine. They're all mine." Luo Nan had just been supported by Mo Peng. He was stupefied on the spot when he heard this. But then he saw Luo Yuandao, who couldn't even stand stably, begin to move crazily. Luo Yuandao raised his leg and dropped it, completely kicking down the remaining 3 relatively intact building blocks. Nurse Hong saw that the situation was far from good. She had already injected a tranquilizer, but she couldn't control it for a while. "Grandfather! Grandfather!" Luo Nan and Mo Peng were both frightened and terrified. They didn't know how to react at all. Nurse Hong had already called for a doctor, but it was impossible for a doctor to appear instantly. Luo Yuandao kicked over all of his creations. Then he raised his head to the sky and howled with laughter. "Fire! Fire! Let the flames burn! Burn through the darkness of this cloak. A new god will step on the bones of an old god to ascend the throne. Come, come, let's see who's the master of the universe." Luo Nan's malevolent and terrifying figure was like a giant hammer. It rumbled and smashed against Luo Nan and Mo Peng's hearts. In the end, the two of them were only 15 or 16-year-old youths. They wanted to help, but they were afraid of causing trouble when faced with this sort of scene. They were at a loss for a time. Finally, the doctor rushed over. Behind him were actually Mo Haihang and Luo Shuqing. And at this time, the two of them didn't know what to say. They just moved out of the ward like puppets, standing stupidly and waiting. At this time, it could be said that every second felt like a year. Actually, it didn't take long. 10 minutes at most. Luo Shuqing walked out of the ward. She faced the two people who were still in a stupefied state and laughed. "It's nothing. Old people are often like this. They just talk a bit more." Luo Shuqing's relaxed attitude made Luo Nan and Mo Peng feel much better. They wanted to ask about the situation in detail, but they didn't know where to start. Luo Shuqing looked at her watch. "It's getting late. It's also time for your grandfather to rest. Let's go eat first. The food here is pretty good." "All right. Your grandfather should be taking a walk outside at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Do you guys want to accompany him?" "Okay." Luo Nan immediately agreed, but then he was a bit worried. "If I'm here, will he? Who do you think you are?" Luo Shuqing laughed again. Then she let out a breath and looked at Mo Peng. Actually, Mo Peng wasn't quite willing to throw his precious weekend time in the mental hospital, but Luo Nan had made it clear. He could only shut his mouth. At most, he would play a few more rounds of 10 days in the wilderness. Yeah. If he could pull Luo Nan over to fight, he could crush him a few dozen times in a row. That would be even better. Luo Shuqing laughed. Then it's decided. All right. When I was consulting with the doctor just now, he recommended a deep sleep nutrition pod. It can ease the mood and reduce stress. Let's go try it out as a family. We can also finish our afternoon break on the way. Ha! Chapter 89. No matter what the two youngsters thought, Luo Shuqing and her husband, the always rational Dr. Mo Haihang, were all excited about the health pod. After lunch, they brought the two youngsters to a side building of the sanatorium. Though Luo Nan and Mo Peng seemed to yield on the surface, they were planning in private. They would firmly oppose if they really had to fork out the money. They couldn't let the two elders be fooled. The so-called health pod was arranged quite like that. It was an individual room layout, and each room had specialized nursing staff. It didn't look like a nap, but more like a high-standard spa. In this day and age, as long as human resources were involved, a high price could be casually called out. Mo Peng's eyes lit up when he saw the sweet smile on the young nurse's face. He had long forgotten about the fooling problem. He was practically impatient to go in and experience it. Luo Shuqing had already booked 4 rooms in a row. They each chose one and went in. Luo Nan and Mo Peng were next to each other. Luo Nan's sensing range just so happened to cover the neighboring room. He heard Mo Peng ask shyly, "Do you want to take off your clothes?" Luo Nan was too lazy to pay attention to the other side. Right now in his room, the beautiful nurse was explaining the various benefits and basic operations of the health pod to him as part of the service. Luo Nan treated this as an advertisement and forgot about it. He was more interested in the health pod itself. Perhaps it was due to the imprint left behind by his special birth experiences, but Luo Nan had a special feeling towards health pods and health pods. It wasn't a feeling of liking or loathing. It was a kind of trance from deep memories. When a health pod was placed in front of him, it was like a hypnotist setting up a suggestion. It would push him into the deep and chaotic, deep memory zone. The feeling was very complicated and chaotic, but he didn't hate it. Really? Luo Nan followed the nurse's instructions and entered the pod. The lid closed, and soft and soothing music sounded. It was still like the faint scent of flowers, faintly discernible. Everything proceeded according to the normal procedure. The lid made of special materials gradually turned from transparent to blurry, slowly cutting off the light from the outside world. Luo Nan closed his eyes, thinking that an afternoon nap like this wasn't bad. But he suddenly opened his eyes 7 or 8 seconds later. Something's wrong. The smell inside isn't right. Luo Nan reflexively went to press the open button inside the cabin. A muffled sound was heard at this time. Someone was lightly tapping the health pod's panel. The hatch cover turned from fuzzy to transparent once more. But Luo Nan reacted quickly, and the hatch cover flipped up. The person outside let out a cry, nearly having his arm pinched. Luo Nan suddenly sat up. On the mental plane, the heavily chained crow buzzed as if it wanted to come out. This was where his strongest power lay. However, at this moment, he came face to face with the person outside the cabin. The beautiful nurse had already disappeared. At this time, standing outside the cabin was a young doctor wearing a white coat and glasses. He looked quite elegant. If he spoke less, perhaps he would give people a better impression. Are kids nowadays also impatient? The young doctor rotated his arm symbolically and coughed once. He adopted a very proper and serious attitude. Student Luo Nan. I am your attending doctor, Zhang Yuliang. Luo Nan stared coldly at him at first, but gradually, the image of this young doctor, who was pretending to be serious, overlapped with a certain person in his memories. It made Luo Nan a bit uncertain. It wasn't until the doctor finished his self-introduction and Luo Nan saw the nameplate on his chest that Luo Nan made a probing judgment. You are? Bro Octopus? Cough. Zhang Yuliang. Yuliang as in Yuliang. The more the young doctor spoke, the more certain Luo Nan was. He let out a breath and relaxed, but he couldn't help but want to laugh. On the night of the 28th, It was this young aptitude user who was wearing a funny t-shirt with a cartoon octopus. While he was laughing and joking, he showed his exquisite ability to make hallucinogens and turn dozens of people in the room into stupid pigs with confused minds. And now, he was wearing a classic white coat and a pair of gold-rimmed glasses. It was as if he was 10 years older in an instant. At first glance, he looked like a highly educated professional doctor. But the hip-hop flavor that was carved into his bones, along with the deliberate movement of his eyebrows, broke through the false shell in the blink of an eye. Luo Nan was most familiar with this side of him. Hey! Hello bro octopus! Luo Nan was still thinking about Octopus's superb drug concoction methods. As a semi-professional, Luo Nan quite admired Octopus. In addition, an outstanding master of hallucinogens was working as a doctor in a mental sanatorium. It seemed quite fitting. I was supposed to have a leisurely weekend shift, but it was ruined by a certain someone. I don't feel good at all right now. Octopus ignored Luo Nan's good intentions. He flipped the flexible screen in his hand and found the relevant information. He spoke in cadence: schizophrenia. Severe mental illness. It occurs in 1% of the world's population. It is related to hereditary factors. People with a history of schizophrenia in their family will have a higher chance of contracting the illness by several times. The examinee's grandfather was a patient with severe schizophrenia. 4 years ago, the examinee himself was admitted to the hospital for treatment due to the dysfunction of his neurotransmitter system, causing his heart and lungs to fail. He was even given a notice of critical illness. The hospital's diagnosis at the time was that if the illness were to progress further, the possibility of the illness being hereditary and developing could not be ruled out. Improper electrical stimulation, drug stimulation, and sudden emotional stimulation could all lead to the illness. TSK, Mr. Psychic. I really didn't know that you were this kind of person. Luo Nan finally came to a realization at this time. Bro Octopus, my aunt and the others? Mrs. Luo Shuqing claimed that a certain someone was talking to himself several times this morning. Moreover, he said things like, "How will XX company be handled? I'll accompany you any time," and other such offensive and cautionary words. Moreover, these kinds of words have no obvious connection to the environment of their daily lives. So, Mrs. Luo Shuqing suspects that this is the early symptoms of schizophrenia. She's also worried about a certain someone's psychological resistance, so she used this method to do an examination. It's a pity that our sanatorium's high-end health pod was used as an anesthetic. Luo Nan didn't know what to say for a time, but he soon came to a realization. My aunt and the others definitely wouldn't have been able to think of this convoluted idea. Octopus spread his hands. Isn't it the duty of a qualified doctor to solve the problems of patients and their families? Moreover, this health pod can perform brain imaging. It's very convenient. He looked at his watch. Your family's elders are about to arrive. Are you going to explain things to them, or are you going to obediently lie down and put on a show? Luo Nan laughed bitterly. He immediately lay down and closed his eyes. A smart choice. All right, I won't violate the taboo of the society and scan your body structure. I'll just use a fake to deal with it. I'll have to trouble Bro Octopus. The lid of the pod closed up once more, isolating the outside world's light. But in reality, Luo Nan was still able to sense the outside world's environment. He was able to see his aunt and uncle push open the door and walk in. From head to toe, their expressions were filled with seriousness, caution, and worry. Chapter 90. Luo Nan maintained his absent-minded state all the way until Octopus opened the health pod. It's not easy to fool them. They are half-experts in this field. Octopus took off his decorative glasses and fanned himself with the flexible screen to express his feelings of hardship. It's over for the time being. They only said that the symptoms were not obvious at the moment and did not dare to deny it completely. Otherwise, they would definitely take him to another hospital. All right, I admit that it's not safe even now. Be prepared. That's right. Luo Nan was a bit at a loss. How could he prepare for this? In the days to come, he would be treated as a schizophrenic by his aunt and uncle? Octopus saw Luo Nan's depressed mood and chuckled. Don't get tangled up. In a certain sense, they weren't wrong. From a certain perspective, every ability user has schizophrenia. Luo Nan raised his head in shock. That's not what I said. it's President Ouyang's wise opinion. Ouyang Chen. Do you know President Ouyang? Yes, the one who invented the hexa-ear. Yes, that's him. He was the one and only registered extraordinaire in the Xia City Society. He started with a mental enhancement, and he was the absolute authority in this field. You're also a spiritually enhanced type. You can learn from him later. Octopus clearly admired President Ouyang very much. He gave Luo Nan an introduction before saying, President Ouyang once said that as an ability user, we often need a set of logic in the normal world and another set of logic in the inner world. Moreover, every awakened should also have their own set of logic. The logic of the normal world helps you avoid making a joke out of your basic daily life. It allows you to act according to the rules of law and morals. It also teaches you simple principles of socializing and working, allowing you to become a normal human being. Luo Nan went, oh. He discovered that this definition was very similar to the social format. Of course, any sociological theory would have similar concepts. As for the inner world logic, it's the logic of a small circle of ability users. Things like revering strength, focusing on one's own strength, and using one's abilities to differentiate between superior and inferior classes. Originally, it was very simple. He just had to fool around in his own circle, like the MMA association. But the problem is that the inner world has a strong influence on the normal world. This causes the logic of the inner world to distort the logic of the real world. Well, isn't it like schizophrenia? Or should I say, the epitome of all mental illness? Luo Nan nodded. It's a bit similar. Of course they look alike. If there is a difference, it is that psychopaths cannot use their logic to affect reality. Their logic is illusory, fragile, and absurd. But we can, and our logic has become the rule that a considerable number of people must recognize. Octopus made a horizontal gesture. If we were to apply this principle to self-logic, remember, President Ouyang suggested that every awakened should have a set of self-logic. Luo Nan inexplicably sucked in a breath. He felt a certain feeling of déjà vu. It was like a gradually rising tide, flooding his chest, his nose, and his head. Octopus continued, the so-called self-logic is a set of self-consistent theories that ability users use to explain their own abilities. As long as you can form a complete logical chain from beginning to end, and can actually verify it, then no matter how ridiculous it is, it's possible. Just like those madmen in the secret orders. Their actions are absurd, but it doesn't affect their strength. It's because they have an internal logic, and use this logic to successfully distort the external world. We can also give an example. Your grandfather, Mr. Luo Yuan Dao, is that okay? Luo Nan was silent. Octopus continued to speak like this. I've seen your grandfather's symptoms. Disregarding the pathological changes in his nervous system, he is the typical manifestation of self-logic, being unable to defeat external logic. If he really does possess an extremely powerful strength that can affect the entire universe, then he is correct. It is appropriate to say that he is the center of the universe, the truth of the world. But in reality, it is impossible to possess this level of strength. Therefore, us ability users cannot fall into delusions. We must abide by reality. We must ponder and revise our internal logic according to our true level of strength. This is so that our logic can be perfectly realized in the external world. Octopus was a bit tired from speaking so much in a single breath. He spread his hands and concluded. From this point of view, every ability user is a psychopath who attempts to use self-logic to distort objective reality. In addition to the dual influence of the logic of the normal world and the logic of the inner world, it is hard for us to avoid being tired. Therefore, some people want to push down the wall, allowing normal people to adapt to the existence of ability users, allowing ability users to dominate this world. There are also people who completely ignore it, don't care, and don't come into contact with it. Even more extreme are those who don't recognize the logic of the normal world. They don't treat non-ability users as people. There are also those who kill. Oh, it's quite unfortunate that you entered this enormous mental hospital at such a young age. You can only suffer a bit more. If you must make a suggestion, it would be better for you to rely on the logic of the inner world. This can be considered a type of compromise. After all, you aren't an awakened yet. You have developed self-logic early on. Perhaps you really will become crazy. And if you follow the logic of the normal world, you will be far too clumsy. Therefore, Participate in a few more society activities. Get to know a few more friends. Form your own circle. You will slowly adapt. This can be considered a piece of advice from Senior. Luo Nan's brain was stuffed with a lump of logic. His brain was more or less muddled. But he could see that Brother Octopus was a warm-hearted person. These words were admittedly a bit mysterious, but they were very helpful to him. Brother Octopus really did want to enlighten him, so Luo Nan immediately expressed his thanks. Octopus chuckled and waved his hand. No need to be polite. It's quite hard to get a chance to curry favor with a psychic. Just don't let me charge too far to the front when we move in the future. I'm just a pharmacist. I'm not cut out to charge and break through enemy lines. Of course, this was just a joke. But Luo Nan suddenly thought of a matter that had been hanging in his mind since a long time ago when he heard Octopus mention a pharmacist. He muttered to himself for a moment and then said, Brother Octopus has done a lot of research in compounding psychotropic drugs? Then do you accept orders? Of course I accept. It's fine as long as you explain the use clearly. Octopus responded smoothly, but then he was startled. He changed his expression and sized up Luo Nan up from head to toe. He even rubbed his chin and muttered to himself for a while before speaking once more. Especially for a minor like you. You need to explain even more clearly. Don't tell me you have some sort of bad habit? Luo Nan didn't respond directly. He focused slightly and transmitted a molecular formula to Octopus through the hexa ear. I want to compound this drug. Can I? Chapter 91. Octopus stared blankly for a while. His eyes focused and looked at Luo Nan. Actually, if you want to kill someone, you don't need this kind of complicated structure. You just need to cut out a random portion from here. The dosage is enough and the results will be absolutely fantastic. Luckily, Luo Nan didn't need to explain. Octopus's eyes emptied once more and he sank back into his professional world. Luo Nan clenched his fist in secret when he saw Octopus's reaction. There's a way. At least at this moment, it wasn't just the concoction of the drug. The principles and effects of the drug were worth serious research by professionals. This was undoubtedly the best news for Luo Nan. He directly shared the molecular formula with Octopus. Didn't he want to obtain a similar result? A notification sound came from the nourishment chamber at this time. It was time for the preset nap time. Luo Nan didn't want to disturb Octopus's train of thought, but he thought that his uncle and aunt would be coming soon. He couldn't help but urge, Bro Octopus, give me a clear answer. Can you do it or not? If you can, I'll give you the dosage and everything else. Give me the ones in front. Octopus's words drifted. Ha! Octopus stared at him once more. His eyes didn't even blink. His face swelled with a layer of blood red. This definitely isn't the original version, right? Any normal person would be toyed to death with so many targeted neurons acting on them at the same time. But its goal isn't to toy with people, right? Amazing. Luo Nan couldn't help but admire Octopus for being able to see so much from a simple molecular formula. But then he thought about it. Octopus himself probably had similar thoughts besides his eyesight and professional level. After all, he was a pharmacist and an awakened. Luo Nan really didn't know whether he should be anxious or proud when he saw Octopus's reaction. But he knew that if Octopus continued to stay in the room and was seen by his aunt and uncle, everything would be exposed. In fact, the two elders who had left in succession had already appeared within the range of his senses. It was too late to leave now. Disappear right now, and then I'll give you the original version. Okay. Octopus's eyes lit up. He didn't say anything further as he pulled open the window and jumped down. The height of 3 stories was nothing more than a single step for him. Luo Nan let out a long breath. He tidied up his clothes and confirmed that there were no flaws. He pushed open the door and left. Mrs. Luo Shuqing was just about to knock on the door when she was startled by Luo Nan's action of opening the door. She carefully sized up Luo Nan's face a few times before revealing a smile and said, What do you think? Is it effective? It's all right, but there's no need to buy it specifically. Luo Nan began to act with his aunt. To be honest, his acting skills were terrible. Fortunately, his aunt also had something on her mind, so the conversation between the two was a little absent-minded. At this time, Octopus also started to harass him through the Hexa ear, forcing him to pass on the relevant information. The more anxious Octopus became, the calmer Luo Nan became. Now, he had to re-evaluate his grandfather's results and make a decision. A chaotic weekend afternoon began. Actually, the afternoon passed by very quickly. After the nap, Luo Nan and Mo Peng played a few rounds of 10 days in the wilderness. Then it was time for Luo Yuandao to go out for a walk every day. The two young men accompanied him cautiously and listened to the strange words of the old man. The uncle and aunt, standing a little apart, talked to each other in a low voice, and all seemed to be proceeding in a calm and orderly manner. The problem was that Luo Nan's ears never had a moment of peace. Luo Nan's uncle and aunt believed that they were far enough away, but there would always be some words that would fall into the range of Luo Nan's senses. Without exception, they were all topics related to his illness. In addition, Octopus's harassment came from another direction without end. Ever since Luo Nan gave Octopus the corresponding molecular formula, it was as if a bag of salt had been poured over him. Octopus's thoughts began to twitch. Astonishment, bewilderment, doubt. And all of this was completely shattered in front of the living example of Luo Nan. It was just as Octopus had said before. No matter how absurd the logic was, as long as it could be verified in the real world, then one must acknowledge its existence. At this time, Octopus was sitting in the laboratory, trying to mix drugs while sighing and groaning at Luo Nan. When I see the first step, I feel that I'm an idiot. When I see the last step, I feel that I'm a madman. But when the first step and the last step are put together, I can fucking say, we're all trash. Give me another one. Just give me one more of the prerequisites you mentioned. I need to verify my train of thought. Don't give it to me yet. My logic is about to explode. My God, how could I have thought of this step? Neuronal structure mutation, growth and proliferation, retrogressive inhibition, and even withdrawal reactions. Everything is in place. Even if I had a brain hologram in front of me, I wouldn't be able to calculate it. This is the entire flow of time. This simply isn't the result a human should have. It doesn't matter if it was created or consumed. When Luo Nan first heard these words, he was nearly unable to suppress his excitement and pride. But slowly, these impassioned emotions melted away one by one from the weak and strange movements of his grandfather's body. What meaning did these praises have from his grandfather's perspective? Would this old man, who lived his life sealed within his logic, be able to feel a moment of joy even if he were to add all the honor and prestige he should have? Even looking at it from the most realistic of perspectives, the sanatorium had opened up all-day visitation to an old man whose condition was deteriorating. This was not good news at all. This was no different from giving up on treatment. Luo Nan gazed at the side of the old man's withered face. Every word and action of the old man this day flowed and permeated the bottom of Luo Nan's heart. An idea grew clearer and clearer from within. The sky gradually turned dark, and the all-day visitation came to an end. The family prepared to return to the city. Luo Nan asked Octopus about the drug through the Hexa ear at this time. Octopus took charge of everything. The society has a specialized express delivery channel. It is absolutely safe and convenient. Starting tomorrow, I can supply a fixed quantity. Then I'll have to thank Brother Octopus. This is nothing. Compared to the value of the two molecular formulas, this amount is a drop in the ocean. Octopus was still in a state of eagerness. Oh right. I want to write a paper based on the molecular formulas during this time. I want to publish it in an internal journal of the society. Can you represent your grandfather and give me the relevant authorization? Luo Nan's heart palpitated with excitement as soon as these words came out. He knew very well that he didn't have the ability to further research and explain his grandfather's theory at this stage. Then, someone who could replace him in all this and give his grandfather the reputation he deserved was one of the best choices. Octopus's level in drug compounding was outstanding. He didn't have any sinister thoughts. It was very pleasant to talk to. He was an extremely good candidate. Chapter 92. After all, Luo Nan had learned from Yen Hong's mistakes and had considered the problem of plagiarism. But the Wilderness Explorers Society wasn't the academic world after all. This place didn't seem to have the soil for academic competition and competition. Instead, practical results were more important. Plus, The status of psychics was transcendent given the current special circumstances. As long as he stood there and displayed his usefulness, no one would be able to deprive his grandfather of his achievements. After some consideration, Luo Nan decided to trust Octopus. He simply replied, "Okay." Octopus immediately laughed heartily. "Excellent. I'll prepare the power of attorney. The society will use the same format and there will be 2 notaries. Each of us will choose one. Who are you going to choose? Your secretary?" Luo Nan finally felt completely at ease after hearing Octopus take the initiative to talk about this. He thought of He Yuan's temperament and status. She was indeed the most suitable to be a notary, and so he expressed his agreement. The family had already gotten in the car and drove out of the sanatorium. Luo Nan was still sitting in the front seat. He turned his head to look at the building that was gradually turning blood red under the setting sun. He was speechless for a time. A moment later he transmitted to Octopus, "My grandfather is here. I'll leave him in your care." Octopus naturally patted his chest in guarantee. "Relax. I never knew there was such a great god by my side. Now I know. From now on, he is my grandfather. I will definitely take good care of him in the morning and evening." My grandfather's current state. Cough. You don't need to pay too much attention to him. Luo Nan was really worried that Octopus would get hot-headed and grab his grandfather like a treasure to interrogate him. I understand. It's not good to disturb the old man in his current state. Then can you hurry up and let me see the old man's notes? Octopus was in a highly excited state right now. His thoughts jumped extremely fast. "All right. I just heard you say that a portion of the old man's notes were lost. That's easy. We can jointly issue a mission later. As long as we set the reward high, like 1 honor point for 1 notebook. Do you believe that even President Ouyang will be mobilized? Don't worry about not having enough points. I can share the burden. As long as it's related to medicine, give me a complete copy and I'll pay in full." "Okay." Luo Nan also smiled as Octopus enthusiastically described the situation. But soon, he changed the topic to something else. "Oh right. Bro Octopus. Let me ask you again. For ability users, as long as their self-logic is complete and can be verified, it doesn't matter how crazy they are. Is that right?" "Of course. Look at the gods, saints, and primogenitors of those secret sections. Their abilities to manifest their divinity are too against the rules. They can't even be stopped." Octopus Bro concluded, but immediately after, he felt that something was wrong, and quickly added, Yes, more important than logic is verification. If you can't interfere with the real world, then you're mentally ill. If you think you can interfere with the real world, then you're severely mentally ill. F***CK. I think what I've told you this afternoon is the content of the intermediate seminar. It's beyond the syllabus. Don't let your imagination run wild. Octopus lived up to his reputation of working in a mental sanatorium. He was extremely sensitive to relevant issues. He was really worried that Luo Nan would let his imagination run wild and act without any scruples. At Luo Nan's age and with his occupation as a psychic, the possible problems that could arise were far too serious. Luo Nan laughed when he saw that Octopus had the intention to continue exhorting him. "Relax, bro Octopus. I know that the most important task for me right now is to temper my body and realize a balance between my mind and body. Then I'll use the dual channels of my mind and body to slowly experience this world and gradually form an answer. I don't need to be in a hurry to explain this world, right?" Okay. Octopus didn't know that most of Luo Nan's words were pointers from He Yuan. He immediately let out a sigh of relief and praised loudly. "Excellent. Kid, you have the perception. You should do this step by step in a down-to-earth manner. Right now, your body really is lacking in polishing. But it doesn't matter. You're still in puberty. Wait until the matter with the human-faced arachnid is over. I'll find you a set of training methods in the direction of mental strengthening. You'll definitely be able to achieve a balance before your body stops developing in a few years. When that time comes, you should be able to rely on the foundation laid down by the old man to become an awakened. All right. I'll send you my notes from the junior seminar in a bit. You can refer to them first. There are a lot of very basic things in there. But these things will still be useful even if you become an extraordinary." Luo Nan took a deep breath. "Thanks a lot, bro Octopus." Luo Nan chatted with Octopus about a few basic topics before cutting off the connection. He looked at the sky outside right now. It had already irreversibly fallen into an even deeper darkness. The streetlights on both sides of the high-speed magnetic track were like two dragons of light without heads or tails. They extended and danced in the darkness. They seemed to merge together at the corner, but they separated in the blink of an eye. They were incomparably harmonious and synchronized, but they were never able to stick together. Luo Nan leaned against the back of the chair and stared blankly at the reflections of the two dragons of light. One is Grandpa. The other is me. What? Mrs. Luo Shuqing, who was sitting in the back seat, was extremely sensitive to Luo Nan's soliloquy. In fact, Luo Nan hadn't spoken a single word ever since he got on the car. He maintained a long period of silence. This made her raise her vigilance. Luo Nan turned his head and saw that his aunt was clearly very nervous, but she was doing her best to maintain a calm posture. He thought for a bit and spoke in a low voice. Aunt, give me a precise answer. Grandpa. How much longer? Luo Shuqing's face was instantly filled with astonishment. Then she used an even more obvious frown to conceal it. Her voice was deliberately suppressed to be deep. What are you letting your imagination run wild? Luo Nan took a deep breath. 2 years. I told you not to let your imagination run wild. 1 year. Luo Nan. Luo Shuqing suddenly raised her voice, causing Mo Peng's body to go rigid to the side. His uncle never turned his head. It was as if he hadn't heard a thing. He was acting as a driver for show. Luo Nan let out a long breath, stabilizing the surging emotions in his heart. He also did his best to steady his voice. Grandpa has feelings for my painting. What are you talking about? Luo Shuqing felt that Luo Nan's train of thought was very strange. Luo Nan lowered his head and opened the notebook. He flipped to the page of the prison building and showed it to his aunt. Grandpa had feelings for this painting this morning. Isn't that right, Brother Peng? Mo Peng's entire body felt uncomfortable when he heard Luo Nan take the initiative to call him brother. This was a fucking threat, but he still nodded. Of course, he had to keep his words like, it was this painting that made the old man go crazy to his stomach. Luo Shuqing took the notebook and looked at the chaotic lines that had other meanings. Her eyebrows furrowed even tighter. She closed the notebook. She didn't want to look too much, so as to avoid being disturbed in her train of thought. Just say it. What do you mean in the end? I want to draw a painting. I want Grandpa to see it. I want to draw a painting that will make him truly happy. Make him happy. This isn't easy. I need time, but I just don't know how much time I have. Luo Nan turned his chair to sit face to face with Luo Shuqing. Their gazes met. I need to draw up a schedule for my plan. So I hope Aunt can give me accurate information to use as a reference. With the identity of Luo Yuandao's eldest son and grandson, is that okay? Chapter 93. Luo Nan knew that his aunt seemed strong, but she was actually a very traditional woman. She taught her children strictly and her thinking was relatively conservative. She often followed the will of the male in the family when it came to matters of principle. Luo Nan was the only seedling of the Luo family. His aunt was absolutely unable to refuse him just because of this. Luo Nan got what he wanted 2 minutes later. He didn't know what to say to his aunt at this time, so he could only turn his seat back. The car sank into silence once more. Luo Nan used the flexible e-ink screen to flip through his grandfather's diagnosis. The diagnosis did not have a clear time limit, but the truth was hidden between the lines. Luo Yuandao had multiple organ failure due to the many complications caused by the pathological changes to his nervous system. He was already in an extremely dangerous stage. In fact, he was completely relying on medicine and equipment to support himself. From the doctor's perspective, it was already a miracle that this old man could walk, talk, and lose his temper. But the strong stimulation of medicine would eventually be unable to resist the exhaustion of the essence of life. No one knew when this balance would tilt. Perhaps the old man's tolerance to a certain medicine would increase by a bit, and this balance would be broken. Then everything would be irreparable. If everything was simplified, it could be summed up in 2 words. At any time. Unexpectedly, Luo Nan wasn't that surprised. It was as if this was how things should be. The Hexa ear sent another message. It was still Octopus. Octopus sent over his study notes from back in the day. The notes were all the key information he recorded when he participated in the Society's elementary research classes. There was a set of fundamental theories that tempered the mind and the fleshly body. They were very classical and practical. Octopus sent them over naturally meant to point Luo Nan in the right direction. Luo Nan skimmed 10 lines at a glance. He roughly flipped through the notes and stored them in the Hexaear's personal folder. He wasn't going to look at them in detail. His body leaned back against the back of the chair. His gaze once again looked at the parallel light dragons outside the window. Although the light dragons had the same trajectory, they would never converge. This was inevitable according to the rational rules of the normal world. It was just like how his grandfather, a schizophrenic, couldn't truly understand him when he drew a picture with the thinking of a normal person. Luo Nan spent a lot of time trying to use normal people's logic to interpret his grandfather's theories over the past 5 years. He explained it to normal people and even convinced them. But now he understood. His grandfather's logic completely broke away from the dimensions of normal people. What did the honor and justice of the world have to do with him? What his grandfather needed, or at least what Luo Nan believed he needed, was a clear, straightforward, and correct communication. That was the beginning of everything. The first was logic. Luo Yuandao's logic was classical. His formatting theory was a form similar to primitive philosophy. He advocated the nesting of self-format, social format, and heaven and earth format. This kind of nesting was not from the outside to the inside, from the material to the spirit. It was from the inside to the outside, from the self to the entire universe. Apart from the founder, few people would like this theory. Because it pushed all existences other than me into the whirlpool created by me, and turned them into my slaves. Even Luo Nan, who listened and obeyed his grandfather's every word regarding the self-format, interpreted the societal format as a 5-level structure of student, employee, technician, clergyman, and politician. Intentionally or unintentionally, Luo Nan understood these 5 levels of structure as relatively objective existences. The social format was viewed as a set of undiscovered formulas, an undefined model, and the collective creation of a certain human society. This was essentially no different from most of the sociological theories on the market. In fact, it was even worse. It was just as Mo Peng, who excelled in all 7 subjects, had said, where was the standard? Luo Nan heard a clear and insane answer to this question from his grandfather's roar. Mine. All of it is mine. My student, my employee, my technician, my clergyman, my politician. Selfish and arrogant to the point of making one nauseous. Extreme to the point of making one tremble. But Luo Nan was able to find a complete and clear thread of logic from within when he eliminated these unnecessary emotions. Luo Nan flipped through the notebook, flipping to the page on the prison building. He flipped to the page on which the wraith sign was derived. These were the 2 psychic diagrams he had left on the paper. Then he flipped back. He opened the flexible e-ink screen and entered the interface of the drawing software. There should be one more here. He had drawn the 3rd psychic diagram on the night of the 28th, which was like a muddy river. However, there was no one inside. Instead, he long pressed to open the 2nd interface of the software. It really was like a muddy river had flowed through here. Then could he understand it this way? The psychic diagram had already been added in this way? The psychic diagram was personally drawn by Luo Nan. Naturally, he knew what it symbolized. The muddy river water was the muddy flow of emotions held by the human-faced arachnid. It was formed from the convergence of the corresponding emotions of countless humans. Practically no one was able to escape from this dusky muddy water. And within this muddy flow, the human-faced arachnid carried out its hunt. Luo Nan stared at the 5-story tower structure. The sketches of human figures were densely packed inside. Admittedly, they were arranged neatly like playing cards, but they were inexplicably an eyesore. He subconsciously trembled for a bit, as if he was going through a sieve. In an instant, the muddy flow of the interface became even more chaotic. It was as if an invisible giant hand was stirring. More importantly, the several hundred playing cards didn't follow the previous interface function of shuffling. Instead, they were scattered in all directions. The thousands of human figures on them were like drowning passengers on a capsized ship. They poured out from the 5-story tower structure, struggling, drifting, and twisting within the muddy flow. Luo Nan calmly looked at all of this and came to a conclusion. Everyone is struggling within the muddy flow of emotions. Simple depictions and replications are of no significance to the society's format. I believe that classifying and placing them is useless. What is truly meaningful? His gaze cast onto the 5-story tower structure of the interface's main body. It was already completely empty inside. No, there were exceptions. There were 2 people on the lowest student level. Luo Nan had quite a deep memory of one of them. It was a gift that he had drawn not even 2 days ago. A certain man was waving his arm with one hand and his other hand was wrapped around someone's shoulder. He seemed deranged, yet he seemed unafraid. It was Xie Junping in an explosive state. The other one was a fish. It looked very lively as it spiraled and swam in the muddy water. In fact, it never crossed the boundaries of the student level. Luo Nan stared at the outline of this fish that seemed to have been casually drawn. He used his finger to gesture a few more times and confirmed its origin. Within the 3rd psychic diagram, it was one of the many ability users who used the fish-style depiction. Its corresponding target was cat eyes. That was not all. Looking up from the student level and across the empty staff level, there was a strange symbol floating in the technician level. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.